Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Not joining me right now is Tom, because I don't know where he is, but I was unwilling to wait any longer to start the show. There were people clamoring in the comments to begin, and frankly, I'm not going to keep our guest waiting any longer. Speaking of, I have been remiss. I want to start the show with an apology to Dan for not having him on the show sooner. That is a crime, a sin, which I hope to make up for tonight. It's Dan from AoS Shorts. How you doing, buddy?
Good, thanks, Vince. No need to apologize whatsoever. Complete honor to be invited. Have me on.
Absolutely. And we are going to be getting into the Gloomspite Gitz. There you go. That's probably backwards. I don't know. It's backwards as I'm looking at it. But whatever. We're going to get into this book tonight. And I am excited about this. This is a big one. Obviously, I think this is just a game changer of a tome. We're going to talk about it. A lot of fun stuff. Dan, are you excited about this one overall? Like just quick high level? You excited about it?
Massively. If I didn't have 3 other armies on my table that I still need to get finished, then I'd be all on board the Gitz train.
That is the challenge. Always too many armies, too little time. So because we don't have Tom yet, and assuming he'll just join at some point, so when he shows up, and everybody can lambast him appropriately. So when that happens, he'll just join in. I hope everybody else can hear just fine. Is everybody, am I quiet? Can everybody else hear me okay? All right. Somebody tell me that my sound is okay. That you just scared me for a moment. Hold on. Should be right. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, I'm good. All right, very good. Okay, it scared me for a minute because somebody in the comments said they couldn't hear. Just wanted to make sure. Dan could hear me okay before, but you never know with the internet. Things go crazy. All right, so since Tom's not here, we're going to go ahead and I'll do Tom's only job, and it'll be quick tonight. So let's talk about some news. First off, there was a rumor engine, and it's actually a thing this week, which could be a thing. So we'll look at it. We'll look at the thing. Since it actually could be a thing. That's fine. All right, let me share up here. And then we'll move past this. We'll get to them Gitz. Got to get some Gitz. All right, there it is. Yep.
It's a wing.
Yep. It's a wing.
Dark Oath Harpy.
Oh, there you go. All right. Dig it. I like the call. Oh, man. I do miss, I miss Harpies and Furies, which I have to be very careful how I pronounce because I will accidentally mispronounce that and mean something completely different. I miss those guys. I have a bunch of Slanesh converted Furies. And, there's just no reason to ever use them now. They're just terrible in all games, 40K and AoS. And it's a shame. I'd love to see something like that come back. That'd be super cool, man. Just because I want that to happen, I back your play. There you go.
Well, it seems to fit, at least for me, the Dark Oath aesthetic of more primordial, bestial kind of way of going with things.
I'm down. It could also, I suppose, be like a wing that's like a cloak or something, that somebody ripped off and was wearing or something like that. Or who knows? Time will tell, but I'm excited. I'm excited because of your guess. I want that to be true. Man, that would be sweet. All right. Are you hoping for a big Dark Oath thing?
I am, just because I'd like to see something different. Also, I'd like to sort of see generic chaos get some love in return, rather than the sort of Chaos Warriors and old Chaos Knights and chariots and things. Have something else which is sort of chaos undivided.
Especially since the Chaos Knights as a kit still holds up. They did those 2 recent videos on Warhammer TV that was how to make a Khorne Chaos Knight and how to make a Tzeentch Chaos Knight, which I thought were really good. Like Duncan showed you how to do some very simple conversions where you didn't lose any troops. You bought 2 boxes, you put them together, you still got the same number of troops. Like, it was a Blood Warriors box and a Knights box. You still got the same amount of Blood Warriors and Knights. You didn't lose any figs, but everybody kind of got in each other's stuff and it made it look appropriate. So everything got corned out. The Zangor one the Tzeentch one was even cooler because it just used the extra Zangor bits from like the Zangor kit, which, yes, he's right. He said, if you've put together Zangor, you have a ton of extra bits, and he is not wrong. Like my Tzeentch box is just Zangor arms everywhere. So it's just so many of them. So, that'd be sweet. I would be totally down with that. I think I'd love to see more for them, more reason to integrate them into the God-marked armies in general. So I would like to see them both stand alone as sort of Chaos Undivided and interesting options to bring them into the God armies and kind of mix it up, right? It's cool when the God armies aren't just demons,
It's humans accompanied by all sorts of awful horrors from the war. What you don't want to see, though, is just 3 units of Marauder
right,
as battle line in another army, just as cheap battle line throwaway units.
Yeah, that's not exactly what I'm looking for. I'm thinking more of like, and certainly you get the pseudo mortals, like you have Bloodbound stuff in Khorne. That's probably the most successful. Maybe like Blight Kings and Nurgle, but like, okay. With Tzeentch, I think it's mostly like either the demon troops or like maybe some Zangor stuff, but there you are. It's mostly for a long time. It was a demon party in Tzeentch, right? All right. Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see something really sweet for Dark Oath this year. So hopefully that 4th Herald pays off.
Yeah.
All right. So next week we have the Shadespire crews. Speaking of Dark Oath, the Dark Oath Shadespire crew, as well as the Mollog crew, the Troll, with his familiars, companions, Stalagasquig and the Bat Squig, and these things, whatever they are. You a Shadespire player? You play Shadespire at all?
Got the box, sat there, never cut it out.
I play Shadespire exclusively at tournaments in times like at night. That's my Shadespire rotation. Like somebody, it's either Friday night before the tournament or like Saturday night and people are hanging out. And somebody's like, you want to play a game of Shadespire? And I'm like, sure, I think I remember how to play this. And then I remind myself how to play it every time. I say that to say I'm not a very competitive player. But I do like collecting the warbands just because they are fun to paint. So there you go.
I picked it up on the basis that I was going to do exactly that. It would be the Friday night game or the Saturday night game at a tournament that I have travelled to. But as my local New Zealanders can attest, various things have conspired against me over the last year or so. So I have not travelled to as many tournaments as I would have liked. Unfortunately,
that's life. It's still there as an option. You too can be I think of it like here in the US, like I grew up Catholic. I don't know if this is a thing around the world, but here in the US you have a lot of like Christmas and Easter Catholics. This is how I like a lot of how I was, where you go to church like twice a year on Christmas and Easter. Yeah. I'm like a tournament Shadespire player. I only show up and play it at those special events. So there you go. It's much the same thing. I really like both those crews. I think they look really cool. And I think that if the Dark Oath thing ends up being something that we get for like different kinds of Marauders or a Marauder type rebuild or something like that, because that Marauder kit it's old. Let's just put it that way. It could use a refresh.
Yep.
So we'll leave it at that. And if that's how it ends up looking, like if you had options for like, the spear people and the bow people and just big axe wielding Marauders, and they all kind of had that mixed look of like barbaric, just wild barbarians of chaos. Oh man, that would just be the sweetest kit. Like take that Shadespire crew and give me like a kit of 20 of those, and I'm in like Flynn. Like that's amazing.
Yeah. The thing for me is where does the rest of the line go outside of those sort of core troop options? So are you seeing more beasts? And that borrows from Beasts of Chaos. How's the rest of it work? Unless that is like the core of the force, and then you just pick and choose units from other Chaos armies.
I think it's got to be animals. I think the dog in the crew is the signal. And I've said this before. Like the way you do Dark Oath is they have this natural empathy with beasts, right? Like with wild beasts. So it's not Beasts of Chaos style with like monsters. I mean, just like you go like mammoths and hunting dogs and just sort of wild predators and stuff like that. I think that would be cool. And they, like they're not, it's not running around alone. It's them subduing these hunting beasts, right? And proving themselves superior to them as a predator type of thing. It's not like the Beast of Chaos where just like a chimera shows up and it's just like, hey, what's up? I'm here. Let's kill some people. I got a D6 mortal wounds and 14 inches. I'm ready to rock. It's not that.
Yeah. So plastic war mammoth.
Exactly. New war mammoth confirmed. Yes, that's what I see that. Yeah. So everybody's already saying it. Yeah. All right. Well, we all await the day. But yeah, Forge World's just making the real long play on that on that war mammoth. Maybe if you make a new one, don't put it on a 280 by 210 mil base with a thing that walks on the ground at 8-inch move speed. Just throwing that out there. That base is untenable for that creature. That is insanity. Please change. Do not want. Yeah. Okay. Craziness. All right. Lastly, I want to talk about a couple tournaments that some people reached out to me for. So the first one, and both of these will have links down in the description, by the way. So the first one is the Essex GT at Wayland Games Hockley. It is this 6th and 7th of July. The link will be down there to find all the description about that. Both of these are 5-game events, 2K event, or 5-game 2K events. So if you're in that area, and then the second one is the War Masters AoS team tournament in Cambridge, Ontario, Canada, and that is June 8th and 9th. So I will put links down there to both of those. If you're in the area, going to be around there. So we got a June tournament in Canada and the July tournament, the Essex GT. So if you're around, check those out. Both of them were already pretty decently, I think. They said they already had a pretty good number of people showing up, but they have, I think they were both like 40 to 60 or something like that. So good number of people, should be a good size 2-day. So there you go. Okay. All right. That's all the news. That's it. There's nothing else. It's a quiet news week, which is fine. I don't want news. We got all the news we want. It's called Gitz. That's our news for this week. Okay. All right. Which is fine. Okay, Tom, I can tell you're here because somebody randomly joined and didn't have their thing muted. Welcome, Tom, 20 minutes late. I already finished the news.
Yeah, I figured it was about time to join.
Sure.
Like, news is over.
Useful as always. You continue to be a valuable asset to this show, Tom. All right.
We had Dan here. I mean, he has a whole website devoted to this.
Sure. Now let's turn to our pick of the week, where Tom will let us down once again and not have anything he wants to share. But we'll start with Dan. Dan, any pick of the week you've got? A blog, a video, anything that you want to point people at? Of course, self promotion is more than welcome if you want to point somebody towards your own content.
I'm going to avoid self-promotion, but it's a long-standing friend of the show in Doom's 4 CanCon marathon list review shows coming up. The audacity of the man to try and get through 220 lists over 4 shows. It just impresses me so much that I have to give it a shout out.
Absolutely. He's starting that like this week, right? Like basically
I think 17th is the first.
Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah. Or maybe that's now where you
that's
are.
Today for us.
Yeah, okay. In the future. But yeah, I'm joining him for the destruction review, and I think it's funny because it's myself and Donald, and obviously Donald is in the UK, right?
Yeah.
So we're
somebody screwed.
So we're trying to get this planned where like I'm on one time and then Donald's 5 hours ahead of me, and then you guys are like 10 and a half hours ahead of that or something insane. And I was like, or 10 hours ahead of that. I was just like, well, this is going to be a fun show for somebody. But there it is. So it'll be a good time. I fully support this as a pick. And yes, you should watch those shows. And not just, I mean, I heard the destruction one's going to be pretty awesome. Just, I'm hearing that. That's the early buzz. It's like Oscar buzz. I'm hearing that one's going to be the good one. It's a real hot pick. Just a word of advice there.
Sitting in the I've been sitting in the CanCon Gloomspite WhatsApp chat, and so I've been seeing the list that those guys have been putting together with the new battletome that they're going to be rocking along at CanCon.
I can't wait to see what the people from Australia and New Zealand come up with utilizing this book. It is going to be an exciting time for sure. Tommy, what do you got? What's your pick?
Well, I have no problem with self-promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So, in light of that, I'm going to promote Dan's website, which is
Sure.
which is AoSshorts.com. For those of you that don't know, it's a wonderful, wonderful collation of just about all things Warhammer related. Everything from AoS, particularly. Everything from podcasts. We have some excellent podcasts. My favorite are obviously the masterclass interviews that Dan does, but there's a tactics section. There's everything from like there's a bit on the Bad Moon Cafe in London that just dropped just recently, and so I'd encourage you all to check it out. If you haven't been to Dan's website before, what are you doing? And on top of all that, he had custom art done for the Gloomspite book. There's mushrooms on his branding. Come on, y'all.
Yeah. Every single release gets a new update, and my mate Andy does it all. So cool, shout out to him for updating all the graphics every time.
You know, I really feel like I need to get some friends who are good at art. Like, I wish Tom had a valuable skill to me.
It's true. It's true.
I guess this has hounded us since I published my the last book I did, when I was like, man, I wish we had somebody who actually was a good graphic designer as a close friend that I could just hit up, but no, it doesn't happen. That's all right. Okay. So my pick of the week, our friend, Rob, Honest Wargamer, they did a really nice Gloomspite Gitz show on Monday. If you don't get enough Gloomspite Gitz tonight, if you want more Gitz, they did a nice review of everything. I'll also spruik Doom, who was mentioned earlier, who also did a 3.5 hour review of a lot of stuff. So there's lots of extra content. If you haven't already watched them, I'll link both of them down in the description. You can basically spend the next 8 hours of your life watching people talk about goblins.
It's fantastic.
So we live in a magical time, folks. Like, this is the golden age of humanity. I want us to all respect that we all have the luxury or the ability, perhaps, to sit around, assuming we have the time, and listen to people ruminate about goblins for 8 hours. That's pretty great. And trolls and squigs, but the whole deal.
It's true.
Yes. And spiders and everything else we're going to talk about today. But before we talk about that, let's talk about some hobby time. So, Dan, what have you been working on, man? You mentioned 3 armies on your table. What's been drawing your attention recently?
I need to finish my take to CanCon. So my Sylvaneth list, blatantly copy and pasted from Laurie and Richie. So I've got an Alario to finish. Phoenix is done, and I've got as many Dryads as I can get done.
Well, fortunately, Dryads are rather quick to paint. Like, of the models, they're not annoying. They're a nice model.
No.
They're very
fine.
uniform.
They're easy to do. So,
yeah.
Alario will be the one that will take the time.
Yeah, you got to get on that. Time is running short, buddy. It's have you started on Alario at all, or are we starting at 0 here on her?
She's primed.
There we go. That's what I like to see.
So we're starting at 1. Got it. Okay. All right. It's not 0.
Is it Zenithal or just Prime?
After how I went with the Zenithal attempt with white spray paint for the Zenithal, I abandoned Zenithal for the second time around after she got a paint stripping bath.
Gotcha.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, clearly we need to get you an airbrush. That'll solve that problem right up. So there you go. Yeah. And then I mean, for her beetle, I found that to be quite an invaluable tool. Let me just say that thing is big. It's real big. It's a big beetle. Yeah. All right. Tom, what are you working on, man?
So I shared last week the picture of all my goblins out, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've been painting cold ones for the last week. And you may think, Tom, you were working on that last week. And the answer would be, yeah, I was. And I also like individually lined a bunch of scales. And they're almost done. They're not there yet, but they're almost done. That's the right answer. So cold ones for my my conversions for my Doomfire conversions. I'm hoping by the end of the month to have all of my daughters done. It probably won't happen, but I'm hoping so. And then I have a board to build, which I've started on. I have some neat surprises for that. I alluded to the fact that I'm cutting up some models that were not supposed to be cut up for my board. So this will be it'll be enjoyable. It'll be tons of fun.
Nice. For myself, I'm finishing up my Daemonettes. I'm on the last 10. 20 are over there done. Last 10 is here in front of me. That'll get me to 70, which I feel will be a respectable number. Then I'm going to pivot to probably there's a competition piece I want to get done. There's a class prep piece I need to get done. But then other than that, it's just going to be then we got some fun Slanesh conversions. So it's going to be lots of mixed up. Fortunately, I don't have to paint the whole class prep thing. It's just literally putting together and priming the thing for teaching in the middle of February, which, by the way, I will mention very quickly, as we can still add some people. If you're interested and you're in the Philadelphia area or somewhere in the Northeast like that, and you'd like to come join me for a 2-day painting seminar, we're going to be doing display painting and Night Titan for 2 days. It's in Phoenixville, which is just outside of Philadelphia. It's February 16th and 17th. I can link it down below. So if you're interested, we would love to have you. It'll be a very fun time. It's 16 hours, and we're going to do, if you really want to learn how I paint, believe me, we're going to cover just about everything. There is no better example of everything you need to do when you're painting than a Night Titan. They require all the tools in the toolbox. We're going to take the toolbox and we're going to dump it out on the table, and we're going to use every tool in there. So it'll be a fun time. And I'm sorry you have to spend 16 hours with me in advance. I don't know what to tell you about that. There's no other way to do it. But it'll be a good time. So I'll throw that down there. Okay. So, gentlemen, shall we turn to some Gitz? It's Git time. Let's get it. So, there's just going to be a pun-filled show. I was happy, by the way. I went through some stuff last night while we were playing D&D. I was kind of sitting there looking at like one of my old like shelves out there that isn't one of these with finished models, and I was just like pulling out and separating the goblins and the squigs. I was happy to see I had 2 old packs of the metal squigs and squig herders, including like the original musician guy still around. So maybe I'll paint those up for a tutorial or something like that. I already used a goblin. I have a bunch of this era goblin. I don't know what era he's from, but it's this guy.
That is the current Moon Clan.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Just a heads up.
Oh, well, there you go.
That is the current kit.
Is it really?
It
is. The guy?
Yeah,
okay.
That dude. Yeah, they did not. Nope. The older ones are your mono pose that came in the Battle for Skull Pass in 6th edition.
Oh.
The 7th edition That's a 7th edition multi-part.
I don't know, man. That guy's pretty old. I feel like he had to be from before 7th. But okay.
Well,
I'll take
maybe he was, but regardless, I mean, there was one kit.
Paul says he's from 5th edition.
For sure, 5th edition.
I trust Paul over you. Paul is the master of all things bits. He is the bit master. Lord Supreme of bits. So there we go. Thank you both, AoS Coach and Paul, for correcting Tom. I appreciate it. All right. So what I want to start here is let's start at the high level. Let's give our sort of overview of the book, kind of what we think about it overall. 40,000 foot view, place in the meta, where it'll end up, strengths and weaknesses, like just high level thoughts, right? Summary thoughts. We'll start with our thesis statements, as it were. Dan, kick us off. What's your initial thoughts after having looked over the book?
four-win army with lots of options. You've got to make choices. So you're going to have trade-offs, variety of different play styles depending on what you want to play, each with some at least tournament viability, and going to be interesting to see.
All right. That is a very tight summary. I like it. Tom.
I agree in that I think it is a 4-win. I think that there is a number of builds. The old term that I used for goblins was ghettoization. And I think that has been carried over, but in a way that has allowed some
cross-pollination.
Yeah, cross-pollination. Let's go with that. Some, but still maintaining the identities of the individual groups.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that you're going to get a flood of it in the meta, just because there's a pent-up amount of these models, and there's a pent-up desire for destruction. I think it is going to be a Night Haunt level army.
Okay. Fair enough. So, Dan, a couple people in the comments asked if you could turn like your recording up so your voice was getting caught louder. I don't know if that's possible, but I'll throw that over while I'm doing my summary here. I too agree on the 4. It's a 4 out of 5 army. I like the Night Haunt comparison. I think that's interesting, although I think it's much more varied. This is to me, this feels like the perfection's a bad word, but the pinnacle so far of this journey we began with the Legions of Nagash, of how to properly bring somewhat disparate forces together while allowing for distinct play styles and allowing for the personality of individualized forces to still show through, and forcing people to make equally distinct choices about the type of force that they want to put on the field and the type of game they want to play. When the podcast with Sam, like Stormcast episode 2 or whatever, they talked about how in AoS 2, one of their design philosophies is being very aware of the play styles the book was allotting for, and making sure that that is, 1, in line with what they want the army to do, and that 2, those play styles are well supported, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel that is very, very much a thing here. You almost feel the different options coming off the page. I don't think they're so strong as to be linear, and I think even within each grouping there are still lots of fun choices to make, but you can definitely feel the different play styles, and that's a very valuable thing because it makes the book more appealing to a larger group of people. More people can have more fun in more ways with one book.
Right. There are low model count armies. Yeah, there are low model count armies, and there are horde armies. And you will feel that as you're building armies. And there's not one way to build each of those as well. I could think about like 2 versions of each of those, of horde armies, and 2 versions of low model count armies.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's start out here with we're not going to do a blow by blow, by the way. Like, there's been so many reviews, and this is not a knock. It's just saying, like, there's been a ton of reviews that have already done a blow by blow of, like, this is every allegiance ability, this is every scroll, this is every battalion, this is everything. Nothing wrong with those. Those are very valuable. My point is that at the time we're coming to this, those all exist. And what I would rather do is talk about a lot of these things at a high level. So we will cover some items. We will cover some scrolls. We will cover some of that stuff, the stuff we like or we think is like high performers and low performers. But what we're going to really try to get into, especially as we go on through this, is like our hot picks, our synergies, our combos, the lists we see emerging, things like that. We're going to try to get to like some kind of insight on the book as possible as that is 4 days into its release cycle, right? So as always, what I say when we do these initial book reviews, we're going to present our initial opinions. You may think we're crazy. We may be. You may think we're wrong. We may be. Only time will ultimately tell on a lot of this stuff. So please do forgive us if we take a swing and miss. Okay? All right. So let's start out just kind of basic cover the allegiance stuff because I think that's important. It sets a lot of the ground rules, right? So the Bad Moon. The Bad Moon. The Bad Moon is a thing that they have. And to start the game, You pick a corner of the board. There are 4 corners in your screen right now. Imagine this is the game board. You pick a corner of the board. That's where it starts. All right. Beginning in turn 2, you roll a die. On a 1, it goes nowhere. On a 2 through 5, it goes 1 space. Which basically, if this is the vertical line across and the dead center of the board, that's 2. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right. So on a 2 through 5, it goes 1. On a 6, it goes 2 and ends up in the dead center of the board. There's like a map in the book you follow. And if it's in a quadrant, so if it moves 1, it's in a quadrant and it affects everything in that quadrant. If you have the center of the board, it affects everything on the whole board. Okay. Once it goes off, it's off. The moon has set or whatever and is no longer affecting anything. And it does not affect anything turn 1. Right?
Whenever it's on the corners, it's not affecting anything.
Yes.
Right.
This is all really critical stuff to understand because it drives a lot of what we're going to talk about, right?
There's a lot of ways to misunderstand this book. And that's actually what I saw like on initial pass is that like what affects what and what is in play and what is not like what is not buffing or whatever is super easy to mistake if you're not like very careful in reading and careful in nuance.
You're not kidding. When you said like, so this book plays keyword bingo. Like there's a lot of stuff you're going to read and go, oh, this is an awesome buff for this unit. And you will be wrong. Okay. Because it'll say like, this is a buff for a Moon Clan Grot. This is going to come up later. Right.
Yep.
And like, you will be surprised.
What has the Grot keyword?
Right. We could do like a BuzzFeed clickbait article of like top 10 units that aren't really Grots. Right.
Yeah. Like, you know, all of those squig riders.
Not Grots.
Not Grots.
Right.
No Grot keyword. Yeah. Right. Arachnarok. No Grot keyword.
Right. So it does play keyword bingo. You need to read this book carefully. The point being is that the moon can go away and you can lose this allegiance ability if it zips off the table. Like the fastest it could go away, right, would be turn 3. Right? If you rolled a 6 at the top of 2, it would go to the center. You'd have this awesome turn of it affecting the whole board. And then if you rolled another 6, whoop, it's gone.
Right.
You could get, if they're like, there will happen. It's not that unusual. It's a 1 in 36 chance. Okay, to roll 2 6s in a row. So like 1 in 36 games played, assuming no moon manipulation, which we'll talk about the Moon King, Loon King later.
You will get a round of moon.
A round of an allegiance ability. Yes, correct. It'll be a good one. You get a lot of bonuses during that one turn, but that's possible. Okay.
Or you could also like roll a bunch of 1s.
Sure, you could roll a 1 2 turns in a row, and the moon doesn't actually come out to like turn 4.
Surprise!
Just like you spend turn 1, 2, and 3 without.
I guess I don't have a moon.
Yeah, like these are fully possible things.
Right. And let me just say, it also captures the whimsical, kind of comical nature of like Goblin Greenskin, like the unreliable nature that was there in like Animosity style in prior editions, right? Like because you had Animosity, and you had, like, units murdering units and stuff like that in Greenskin armies, where that just doesn't exist in AoS, or it hasn't existed. And now suddenly we have this kind of random, weird, whimsical thing that just kind of pops in and out,
right?
With only a little bit of actual control on the table.
Which is, by the way, it's one of the contributory factors to why I'm saying a 4 out of 5. It's not the only, but it's one of, because it's very easy to not do much during a game. At any rate, again, Loon King dependent. We'll talk about that. Even so, you can still get that. What the moon does is a bunch of different stuff based on what your keywords are. The most relevant thing I want to talk. Yeah, it's got like a bunch of super good buffs, and we'll talk about them as we go on. I'm not gonna bang through every one of them. Like it affects everybody as you would expect. Trolls regenerate faster. Spider venom gets better. Like all this stuff happens. The ones that I think are most relevant for our discussion that will loom over us, right, is the bad moon magic, where the moon is affecting your wizards get +1 to casting rolls, right, and enemy wizards subtract 1. So it causes a 2-point swing if you're both in the moonlight.
If both casters are there.
If both casters are in the moonlight. So in other words, what would definitely happen if the moon's in the center of the board, right? Like that by necessity has to be true. And then the other one is the other one that I want to mention because it's going to contribute to a lot of things we talk about. This army is swimming in command points. This is the Scrooge McDuck of command points. Like they're just going to end the game with a vault of them if you want to build that way. There are many builds that are just like command point machines. And one of the things the moon does,
and most of the builds are like,
sure. If your general
not going to use them, yeah,
right. If your general's a Gloomspite Git, which is the broadly applying keyword, so you don't have to fight with that too much. And they're affected by the light of the bad moon. Then at the start of your hero phase, you get an extra command point. Just ding. In the turns where your general's in the moon, you get 2 command points at the start of your turn instead of 1. Thumbs up. So I've rambled for too long, and I haven't given it over to Dan. So Dan, overall, what do you think of like the allegiance abilities? And that kind of stuff. And if you want to transition to talk about the Loon Shrine as well, let Dan talk. Then we can talk about that as well.
Sure. I still struggle to work out what I truly think about this allegiance ability. The randomness just means that you can't. I struggle to think of. I always want builds that are reliable. I want combinations and setups that are going to work well, and you're not going to have unreliability that will let you down. When the Loon King gives you the option to, but then what's your trade-off? So you're spending 220, you get a variety of other things. Cheap model, but you could have 2 other heroes for that price, or you could use some of the money on a Loon Boss or Mangler Squig or something if you're going for it. So yes, the jury is out for me on the allegiance ability as to whether or not you'll build around it.
Yeah, I mean, my honest opinion is you just assume your army does not have this bonus. And you treat it as solely a bonus.
Yep.
I really think that's how you need to think about playing your army. So like when in your mind, you're like picturing your turns and how they play, you picture you're playing without the light of the bad moon. Like that, your strat should not revolve around the moon. Right. Now there are a few exceptions to that, and we'll talk about them. I'm speaking generically here, right? Like there are ways we can take a little more control of this, but generically, that's how I would think of it. All right. So we can't talk about the allegiance abilities without also talking about the shrine, obviously, right? Because you also get to put down the shrine, which is this giant terrain piece, right? Okay. Which is a big terrain piece and an obstacle. So it uses the obstacle rules. It makes your Gloomspite Gitz units wholly within 12 inches of it immune to battle shock. Not the biggest radius, not the smallest radius, but that's cool.
That is Gloomspite Gitz is the one overarching keyword.
It is, yes.
That is the one keyword that is going to touch everything in the army. So that affects trolls, that affects spiders, that affects everything. That's relevant because a lot of things aren't that.
Oh yeah. And then the key here, what the shrine is really doing, other than that battle shock immunity, is at the end of this I'm going to read somewhat directly because it's relevant, and we're going to talk about it probably a lot in some of the builds. At the end of each of your turns. By the way, there's like 6 FAQs I'm going to say during the show already need to be submitted, so I hope people are already submitting them. But we'll cover them. At the end of each of your turns, you can pick one friendly Stabas or Shooters unit, the basic Grots, that has been destroyed. If you do so, roll a die. On a 4+, a new replacement unit with half of the models from the unit that was destroyed, rounding fractions up, is added to your army. You must set up the replacement unit wholly within 12 inches of the Loon Shrine and more than 3 inches from enemy units. Not 9, 3. They have to be set up outside of combat, but only 3. Each destroyed unit can only be replaced once. Replacement units cannot themselves be replaced. So, in the simplest terms, if you've got a unit of 60 shooters and they get wiped out at the end of your turn, you can roll a die on a 4+, 30 shooters get set up wholly within 12 and outside of 3 of the Loon Shrine.
Yeah, a new unit.
A new unit. Yep, exactly. Okay. There was a question of there's gonna spell later that allows you to teleport units around. Can you teleport this thing? My reading of it is no, because it is not a unit. It is a piece of scenery. If you look at the other units, they say a blah, blah, blah unit consists of this model, a blah, blah, blah unit consists of this. You can flip to any War Scroll entry and see that a blah, blah, blah unit consists of this word, or this consists of this single model or whatever. And they've defined single models are a unit, but this says it is a single terrain feature, not a unit. And the spell specifically says unit. So my read is you cannot teleport this thing, but I will openly admit that is FAQ number 1. I would feel better if it was just FAQ'd and we could stop talking about teleporting around the terrain piece. All right. So Dan, what's your thoughts on the Loon Shrine?
Useful. Like, it's going to hold a center of your battle line. It's useful for particular scenarios where you're going to be defending your home objective. It deals with one of the main issues for Gloomspite and Moon Bravery. Allows you to use that trophy hoard of command points on other things for your army. Things about it is I'd be interested to see how many people go for the million recycling grots kind of builds, if it's effective or if it's just plain boring and doesn't get things done. And yeah, the only other thing is you just got to be careful that it doesn't, you take it for the benefits and it doesn't become like this anchor that you put your whole army around.
Right. It could easily become that. To answer a question in the comments, by the way, somebody said heroes don't say unit in their description. That is correct. But there is an FAQ answer that says, is a single model still a unit? Is a single hero model still a unit? And the FAQ says yes. There is no such thing reference to a single terrain feature being called a unit. So there you go. At any rate, again, I think it should be an FAQ, but there we go. Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say the other argument you see people that want to be able to teleport it around the place is that it's listed under the heading of unit in the pitch battle profiles at the back of the book. But also all of the endless spells and War Scroll battalions also are, and they're italicized rather than the units, which are actually non-italicized.
Yeah, I would call that the needs of Excel, not a game rule. But that's fine. Yep. Again, just put in the FAQ and we can all just put this to rest. Okay. Like, all right. That is a notable thing. This is a really big piece of terrain and it has to be set up an inch away from any other terrain feature and 12 inches from your enemy territory. But if you've got an objective in your home base in open space, you can plunk this thing down right on top. It doesn't have to be set up, away from objectives.
Right. Unless event at rules restrict it. Sure. I know in the US there are a number of events that restrict it to within, like, you can't put terrain pieces within 6 inches of objectives.
Right. Which is fine. And if that's what the event rules, cool. That, so be it. But just in the raw, you can do that.
So my only critique of this
of the shrine. Like, I love it. First off, like, if nothing else, I love the fact that I can just lay down like a line of sight blocking item. Like, haha, I'm hiding my goblin back here.
Yep.
That said, it makes me sad that this is restricted to Sabas and Shooters for like coming back. I really wish it had basically said like any battle line unit.
You're saying you wish that it brought back other things besides just shooters and stabbers?
I do. Like
I don't. I really don't. Recycling units is the worst. And one of the big problems with Legions right now is it recycles too much.
Sure, I hear that. What I don't like though is that it pushes people into goblins, into like the foot goblins. And so like people who are wanting to play trolls, this shrine loses a lot of its actual utility.
That's fair. Then the way to solve that, if they had wanted to do that, okay, then the way to solve that would have been to add a Dankhold Troggoth command trait that says you can use the shrine to bring back this discrete thing, if your troll is the general and still alive, right. And that would have been fine in that case, where you actually had to expend something for it. But just like blowing the doors open to all battle line is like just such a nightmare. But if you're like making some kind of resource allocation where like I decided to take a troll boss and I had to make him my general and I had to pick the command trait, okay. I would probably be willing to say in that scenario, fine, as a design choice. They didn't make it, but that would have been a way that I could have seen him going.
Right.
Broadly speaking, that would have been too applicable.
I'm just sad that like spiders, for example, or squig hoppers or whatever. Can't do anything.
Sure. Which is fine. I mean, recycling units is generally a feel bad. It's going to be a real fun party as we start going through this to kill 60 stupid goblins. Okay? Like, dear God, that is an uphill struggle. Now, if you catch them flat-footed, you'll blow them off the table. But they have many ways to tilt the odds ever in their favor. Some part of our prediction was certainly true. Like, this book is a debuffathon in several of the builds. Not all, but several of the builds. Right? Yeah. And there will be armies that just make your army do nothing.
Yeah, woe be to the heavy magic, the magic heavy armies that don't have lots of casting bonuses.
Or melee.
Or yeah. That's a good call. Or melee for that matter.
Yeah, this army has debuffs everywhere for like enemy armies who are melee or enemy armies who use magic. Bottom line. Okay. So I mean, it's one of those things. Did we lose Dan, or did he just became a little AoS?
I just changed the icon.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on. All right, so let's move into so with that stuff out of the way, that groundwork laid, gentlemen. Let's do some hot picks. It's hot pick time. Okay. So the way the command traits are set up, obviously you've got Blessings of the Bad Moon, which is for your loon boss only, and there's lots of loon bosses. There's loon boss on foot, with cave squig, on cave squig, on mangler squig. There's loon bosses all over the place, and they can all take this stuff. There's the Gifts of the Gloomspite, which is for your Moon Clan wizards, which there's only 2, I believe. Is that right? The regular shaman and the fungus shaman. There's the Marks of the Spider God, which are the scuttle bosses, which is only the guy on Giant Spider. It's not the dude on... It's not the shaman on Arachnarok. And then there are the Trog boss ones, the Dankhold Trog boss, which can only be taken by Dankhold Troggoths. In other words, you cannot take it on your Troll Hag because she's a Fellwater now post update. She's not a Dankhold Troggoth. Okay. So, out of this grouping, we can go through this in whatever way you want. What are some of the ones that caught your attention and you could see being a thing you would that you would take and you would think has value in an army?
Fight Another Day.
Yep.
All right. So this is out of the... Yeah, you want to walk us through it? So this is out of the Loon Boss chart.
Yeah, so out of the Loon Boss chart, Fight Another Day that says that each time this general attacks with its melee weapons, it can make a 2d6 move after all of its attacks have been resolved, finishing that move more than 3 inches away from enemy units. So you go in, you hit something, you bounce away. And if you can bounce, because you're a Loon Boss or Mangler Squig, then this move can give you quite a bit of flexibility as to where you end up.
I agree. I think this is a hot pick. I think for your squig heavy armies, the ones being led by your loon boss on Mangler, who I'm sure we'll talk about, he'll show up in a hot pick list because he is a hot pick. This is such a potent command trait. The ability to hit and bounce before repercussion, right? It's incredible. So, depending on how charges work out in your units, it very much encourages you to charge in there, slam into something with him, and then just be like, and I'm out. Fade, hit and fade, right?
Yeah. And there's so many options in this book for that kind of play. And then worry about the consequences later or bounce out. With this command trait, some of the options in terms of the realm artifacts or spells, there's just a lot of ways that you can pull this trick off.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a strong ability for that particular build. I think I would realistically only care about it for the Loon Boss on Mangler. I don't think the other ones would rise to the level for me to have it, because he's the destructive melee weapon and also a pretty glass cannon.
And he flies.
Right? And he flies. Yeah. So he can really take advantage of the bounciness, right? To get himself out from being stuck in. Okay, cool. Tom, you got a hot pick?
I do. So my hot pick is for anybody. This probably shouldn't be surprising. Is Monstrous Mount from the Spider God's Favor. So it's a Scuttle Boss. So it's your like little like hero. So not the Arachnarok because they don't get one of these traits. It's like the little hero fighty guy. And the Monstrous Mount trait makes it so that whenever the spider venom ability is triggered on that model, it does double the normal amount of mortal wounds. Now, the significant thing here is that they've changed the war scroll. It used to be like 4 attacks from the guy's spear, 4 attacks from the 4 attacks from the spear, 4 attacks from the spider, and basically only the spider's attacks triggered the venom. Well, now the spear is an envenomed spear, and so now all 8 attacks have a chance of triggering the mortal wounds.
Yep.
So we'll talk about this later, but it's really good.
Yeah,
Like,
this is where we get into the combo breaker, right? Like this is that's where this guy starts just popping off because we've got a double. That's a triple double right there. Yeah,
we'll get there.
We'll get there.
I know at least one person is taking the 44 mortal wound Scuttle Boss to CanCon.
I'm glad to hear it.
I may or may not have him on the table at Adepticon. We'll see.
All right, so don't worry. We'll talk about the combo as we move through. Right now, we're just setting them up with the hot picks. All right, so I'm going to pick one here. I like Dead Shouty. Again, this is out of the Loon Boss. So this is once per battle round, this general can use a command ability on their war scroll without a command point being spent. This one, I think...
You chose this as like a hidden gem?
No, it's just a hot pick. I like
man, this was like my worst command ability.
Really?
Yeah.
I like this thing. Why don't you like this thing?
Because you're going to be crapping out command points in this army.
I don't see a reason not to have more. Like traditionally being able to use an ability for free, because a lot of the command point things you're going to get. First of all, if you're taking a command trait at all, then you don't have the Loon King as your boss. Okay. Number one. Number two, I don't want to have to take the Fungoid Cave Shaman. And even if I do, his additional 1 is only on a 4-up. Number 3, I just said I like to play as though the moon isn't affecting me, right? Now, it's true that all of these things can add to command points and other, but like this is just a solid thing that says regardless of the command point situation, I can do this thing. And it has to be a command ability on their war scroll, right? So you can't use this to like to make somebody run 6 or to do an inspiring presence. But the reality is, depending on your Loon Boss, there's like quite a number of options here which have value. And being able to pop another one off for free, I think is quite good. I stand behind this one. Like, it reminds me of the like Skyer burn a warp charge token every turn for free. And I always found that so powerful because you don't have to worry about the resource. You just get to do the thing. Right. And so like knowing that that's there is just so much better to me. Now, I mean, the converse one that totally sucks in light of this is the one you want to talk about is like the Cunning Plan, where you just start the first battle round with 1 additional command point. How are these both in the same chart? Why would I start battle round 1 with 1 additional command point as opposed to this other thing, right, where I can do this once around again? Like, one of these things is clearly superior to the other. So
right. Well, but that one would let you, like, I would push back and say that one would let me like stop battle shock if I don't have a battalion before the game starts.
Sure, because it's technically at the start of the first battle round, and if I don't go first and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I'm going to assume if I'm playing goblins, I've already thought about that. Right?
Keep the goblins from being alphaed off the table.
Not enough reason. Like, I've already started with the command point. I've built that into my army. I'm not burning the command trait when there's so many more valuable things out there. All right. But c'est la vie. Okay. That's all fine. What else? Yeah. Any other hot picks out of this list, Dan? You got anything? There's some good options in here, I think. I was actually quite impressed with this, which I like, because we're going to talk about something in a moment that shows the tension here. But anything else you like out of here?
I quite like, if you're going for the recycling build, then you go for the Clammy Hand in the Blessings of the Bad Moon. where that allows you, if your general's within 12 inches of the Loon Shrine at the start of the hero phase, you can use the Moon Clan Lair scenery rule twice in that hero phase instead of once. So you can bring back potentially 2 units.
Which leads us to FAQ number 2.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, ding, ding. FAQ number 2. Because on the Loon Shrine, it says at the end of turn. And on this, it's implying that it's affecting the same ability, but it's triggering in a different phase. Clearly, we have a misprint situation here. They clearly did not mean to take you from 1 to 3, as some people are arguing, where you can do it like twice in your hero phase and once at the end of the turn. Obviously, that's not the intention. But FAQ number 2, I'm sure somebody's already submitted this, and this one will be cleared up. My understanding would be it would just allow you to do the thing twice. So there you go.
At the end of the turn.
Yes, at the end of the turn. Right. Correct. And it should say, like, if your general's within 12 inches of the Bad Moon Loon Shrine, at the end of your turn, you can use this twice at the end of your turn. Right. I'm assuming they just probably, my guess is at some point in time, they changed one of these elements. Like maybe originally it did work in the hero phase, and then playtest feedback, they moved the phase it was triggering in. Right. Mm-hmm. And they didn't go back and clean up this.
They didn't want to, like, you have to deal with the problem of, like, okay, well, can it then move? Like, if it comes back in the hero phase, like, do the goblin move? And, like, then you have to add wording to prohibit that. And so they said, well, what if we just put it to the end of the turn?
Right,
like
where it's the weakest possible situation, because they run out and can do nothing, right? Because it's the end of turn.
Right.
Yeah. So unless you're on a double, it's like nothing happens with that unit.
What the turn allows you to do, by the way, is to bring back troops that you've lost that turn. Like, that's the other perk of it.
Sure.
Like, you could suicide them and then pop them back out.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's just it's not all a bad thing. How about that? There's some bad and some good to it. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Right on. I dig the clammy hand. Tom, you got a second hot pick?
Yes, and it's not on this chart. On any of the charts. Okay. So interestingly, the Arachnarok, I'm going all spiders this time. The Arachnarok has a rule on the War Scroll that says that if this unit is chosen as the general. So basically all Arachnaroks have a built, or the Spider Shaman ones, have a built-in command trait for that, like that's designated for that general. They don't get unless they have to choose that other one. And it increases the bravery of all goblins within range, or all like Spider Fang within range. And you go, well, is that really good? And let me point you to the fact that the Spider Fang, the spiders are on a bravery 4 default.
Sure. Spider Riders, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There are 2 wound models on a bravery 4. I think it increases bravery by 2. I don't have it in front of me immediately, but I'm pretty sure that the web spinner. That's what I was trying to confirm before I moved on. Anyways, because on the Goblin War Scroll, if you have 10 models in that unit, you can have a banner bearer that increases bravery by 2, and they go from a whopping bravery 4 to a bravery 8, and that's a pretty big swing.
Yeah.
It's bravery 2 for all Spider Fang units wholly within 24. So swinging the bravery on all those spiders from 4s to 8s. And particularly, it's like a default bravery. And so you're actually swinging like the target numbers for all of your like Mind Razor and like the debuffs. Like, so this army is going to be particularly susceptible to bravery debuffing. Like, I think their nightmare counter, by the way, and I'll talk about this later, is like the Shrieker Host from Nighthaunt. Because
the one that takes away the ability to use Inspiring Presence.
Yes, and they're the Harridans, the one that everybody hates. Like, if the bravery is like lower than like 5 modified, 5 or lower modified, the Harridans, you have -1 to hit those units. And so like that army then has a built-in, like against goblins, -1 always to hit them. And if you're within so many inches of any of the units from that battalion, you can't use your battle shock immunity, which just like explodes this army. And so that gives them a resilient battle shock resilient force within the goblin thing pretty quickly just by taking the Ragnarok as your general. Like, I was really poo-poo of this initially, and then I began to like look at the numbers, and I was like, oh, so you can have a default 8 bravery on goblins. That's not terrible. In the world where, like, you know, they could experience some very bad things.
Yeah,
it gets good.
All right, we can't leave this behind without talking about Loonskin, because this is actually quite interesting. Loonskin is a troll one, and if you've got a troll general, I would imagine this would be the one you take. The general counts as being affected by the light of the bad moon wherever it is located until it is removed when it reaches the opposite edge of the battlefield. Which actually says to me this is the only way I see in the book to be for any model to be affected by the bad moon in turn 1. Because it says unless it has left, right? Which it has not left at turn 1. It just hasn't entered. Perhaps we'll call that FAQ 2.5. It's worth a question. But you see my argument, right? Like, you read the text, it says you're being affected by it until it is removed when it reaches the opposite edge of the battlefield. Now, I could read their intention there of meaning whatever table quadrant it is doesn't matter. Your troll is always affected. But the way it's written, it's affecting it even if it's on its corner edge in turn 1. So there you go.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. For turn 1, I think that Loonskin probably works. Not that matters.
You think that's a more valuable trait to take?
No,
than Mighty Blow.
I do, because I don't think the boss is worth I don't think the boss is worth a hoot in combat, no matter what. So throwing good money after bad isn't worth anything. My point, Tom. Like, let me tell you why it is worth something. Because your argument's going to be the troll doesn't need to regenerate in turn 1. Right? That's what you're going to say to me?
Maybe. The general may or may not need to regenerate in turn 1.
Okay. My argument is, you're right. Let's assume he's unwounded. Right? The general. However, the lunatic inspiration I talked about earlier means if he's affected by the moon, you get a bonus command point. And it allows the troll to fish extra command points easier, which isn't a thing you have as much access to in the troll army.
Okay.
So, trolls generally have less need of it, by the way, for things like battle shock immunity, given their numbers. But being able to like reroll charges is pretty important because you want to get your trolls in.
Right.
Okay. You got to pay the troll toll if you want to get the boy soul. So now let's talk about our artifacts of power. Any hot picks here? Again, these are broken up somewhat similarly, with the distinction that the spider ones can be taken by the Ragnarok hero this time, not just the Scuttle Boss.
And the shaman ones can't be taken by the fungoid cave shaman.
Right, because it's madcap only. Yeah, like I said, this book is keyword bingo. You are constantly like trying to you gotta have your Pepe Silva wall out to like figure out what you're doing here. Okay. Dan, any hot picks here?
I'm going to leave the spider ones for Tom. But if we're looking at the fetid fetishes, say that 10 times fast when you're drunk. For the madcap shamans, then the moon-faced mommet.
Yeah.
So at the start of the combat phase, pick one enemy unit within one from save rolls for attacks that target that unit until the end of that phase.
Yeah, it's like your little madcap shaman's got to be relatively close to the fight. But that being said, there's no reason you can't like bunker him in the middle of your goblins, right? Like he's just a tiny guy on a 25 mil base with a stick. And so he can just be in the middle of a sea of 60 goblins. And then whenever they get in a fight, he just goes that unit and they have neg one and their neg one to save, right? For that combat, which is pretty great.
I can see Moonclan armies doing the sort of layered Russian dolls scenario of the 60 stabbers, the madcap shaman, the spore splatters behind, the snafflers behind, and whatever else you want to protect from shooting behind that.
Right. And then maybe the fanatics in who pop out the front, like the normal loon fanatics. So like this one unit is just like sort of orbiting all this. I like the Matryoshka reference. Yeah, but it's very much just like, And just all this stuff pops out of that unit. Yeah, I like that. Tommy, what's your pick?
I'm gonna go for the Totem of the Spider God. My pick number 1. So when a friendly Spider Fang unit is wholly within 12 inches of the bearer, its Spider Venom ability causes mortal wounds on a 5+ instead of 6. This is so good. So good. Like, where to start?
It makes you not have to worry about the moon to get the 5 up.
So if we're talking about reliability, this makes one of your guys a moon bearer.
Yeah.
Carries the moon with him wherever he goes, and it affects a 12-inch bubble. For arguably himself and other units nearby. And what that means is that if this is on your dude that has his 8 attacks and doing double mortal wounds, he's doing those double mortal wounds on 5+ instead of 6s. It's really good.
Sure. All right.
Yeah, and if it's on an Ragnarok, you're on a pie plate with an additional 12 inches.
Sure. If you wanted to go a different direction, if you want to keep going with like the mortal wound combo, you can take the Black Fang, right?
Hey. You're stepping on my toes, dude.
You can take the Black Fang, which adds another D3 mortal wounds to your hit roll of a 6 if you already cause mortal wounds on a hit roll of a 6. Like, say, you had the Spider Venom ability of that guy. So now, with what we've built so far, when you hit roll a 6, right, with your 8 attacks, it is now 2 plus a D3. Do you want to give the important order of operations note here, Tom, since we just tripped across this?
Yeah, so in the FAQ, they have clarified that GW math works as follows when there are additions and multiplications. This is an old FAQ. That multiplications, if there are any multiplications, all the multiplications happen first, and then you add.
Right. So in other words, you're not doubling, which is a multiplying effect, the D3.
Right. It's not like D3 plus 1 times 2. It's not that. And this item itself says, like, if it does damage, this just does an additional D3. As in a quick aside, most people are going to know this, but the spider, the Arachnarok caster, gets a spell. He casts it on an allied unit. That unit does double mortal wounds on their bite.
So now we're at 4 plus a D3.
You're doing on every 5+ on that little goblin, 4 mortals plus a D3 on every 5+ on 8 attacks.
If you're in the light of the bad moon.
Right, but he can be the carrier. Like, he can be the little... Oh, no, he can't be.
You couldn't have both of those. You'd have to have 2 artifacts. You could have somebody behind him.
You could have, like, the Arachnarok behind him paired up with him.
Yep.
Casting the bubble on him. And so he's been doing a D3 plus 4 with 8 attacks on a 5+.
Yes. Yep. And by the way, it's not one of the things we're going to see is that they really did a knockout, bang up job with battalions here. Like, I think lists will often feature battalions. So I don't think that's any issue. My other hot pick is nothing in trolls and realm artifacts. Realm artifacts are my other hot pick. I am so shocked at, like, I think the troll artifacts are all bad. I think a lot of these artifacts are just like meh, and that's fine. Like, my next pick, I think after this would literally be realm artifacts, but I don't know. Is there anything else, Dan, that caught your eye? Anything else you think has value?
No.
Right. That's it. Like,
no, you're right. Yeah.
Like no.
There you go. Beyond like the 3 we named, maybe 4. There's like, okay, great, realm artifacts from here on out.
So the hilarious part about that. Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say I named some others when I put my review up, but all of them are inferior to what you can get from realm artifacts.
Right.
Yep. The best part about this when I was looking at it was like, and even the Black Fang, which we've talked about, that does the extra D3 on 6s. Like, most of the time, if I have 2 artifacts, I'm not taking that Black Fang because it's just gilding the lily. Like, I'm already doing 4 mortals on a 5+. I don't need that extra D3 most of the time. like on the numbers. Like you just don't unless you're trying to assassinate like hero. Like
I don't know. It's hard to kill Nagash. You know, he has a lot of mortal wound protection. 4-up negates 50%. Just saying.
does. At the same time, like I would rather probably take I'd rather have an offensive artifact and then a defensive artifact and do something like the Griff Feather token or something like that. Or the Verdant Mantle, like being able to dispel endless spells.
Sure.
So dispel in the hero phase and recast them for free.
Yep.
All of that is like way more valuable in this army.
All right. Next up, spells. Hot picks in Dust spells. So these are divided into 2 categories. Moon Clan Wizards, which are, again, the Shaman, the Madcap Shaman, and the Fungal Shaman guy. And what was previously the artist formerly known as the Herald. And then the Spider Fang Wizards. All right. So, picks here. Dan, you got any hot picks out of this one? Out of these you like?
Itchy Nuisance.
Oh, yeah, boy.
Just thinking about a spell that gives you so many options, both offensively and defensively. So 6 to cast, you pick 1 enemy unit within 18 inches of the caster and visible to them. So no use if your shaman's hiding behind the Loon Shrine. But their unit fights at the end of the next combat phase after the players have picked any other units to fight in the combat phase. So always strikes last on a unit that you don't want to have to fight.
That's real good. That's real good. Yep. And on a 6 too. Woof. Yeah, I dig that one. I mean, obviously super powerful. There's actually, I think, 3 different methods of forcing always strikes last in this book, right? That being one of them. And, you know, there's, again, it's kind of hard to get all of them, but it's not hard to get one of them or maybe 2 of them, right? So this army will have that in their toolbox in a lot of different builds, which means that thing you really want to fight, you know, basically the unit, because they're going to be doing this on their turn.
That Witch Elf Horde.
Sure, that somebody wants to fight second is now going dead last, right? Or whatever. It tilts combat in their favor. All right, Tommy, you got a hot pick here?
We're not doing endless spells, right?
No, these are non-endless spells, just regular lores first.
Yes. My favorite would be the
Hand of Gork, the Squig Moon, the Squig Lure.
You know, I'm gonna go with Sneaky Distraction.
Okay.
I like those others. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna start Spider Fang first. That's where my heart's at.
It's where you're living.
Yep. So Sneaky Distraction. It does have a cast value of 7, but you're gonna find out for Spider Fang Wizards, I would argue that's not a big deal. We'll talk about this though. And until your next cast, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units while they're wholly within 12 of the caster. And considering that most of the time your caster is going to be on a pie plate, that ends up covering a pretty large area. Smart opponents can like string their units out, like daisy chain outside of the 12 inches.
Yeah.
But especially because you can often control a lot of combats, you can make a Ragnarok caster really tanky with this and like a Griff Feather Charm or the headdress, because you can put them on -2 to hit.
Sure. I would argue this makes him... So I hate this thing because it says an enemy unit wholly within 12 inches. And I get why they did that, because it's a broadcast to any number of units, not just like one.
Yeah.
Right? But like, I hate that you can defeat this by daisy chaining. Right?
Sure. Yep.
Now, it makes your Ragnarok very resistant to enemy heroes. Right? Yep. Who like, yeah, let's say you've got the Griff Feather Charm on your Ragnarok, and then you cast this. Right?
Yep.
Suddenly, many enemy heroes are going to suddenly be very hard pressed to kill your Ragnarok in melee when they're on -2 to hit, right? Like that's a hell of a penalty.
Perpetually, like they're getting around that. Yeah,
sure. Well, I mean, they could bonus their way out of it, but yes. So the point being is that like because they're the hero is going to by necessity be within 12 inches, wholly within 12 if they're in combat, right? The only exception would be the only exception would be the Corn Dragon, who could fight you at the edge of his range, okay? Like, could pile into the edge of his range, on a completely vertical line, and the tail of his 280 mil base would tail outside of wholly within 12. That one model
Get out.
can extend would be 12 and a quarter inches long.
If that is, I'm just gonna, when I pile in, I'm gonna move him wholly within 12.
Sure, I'm just saying, like, that guy, for that, he can sneak up on you, and if he's a very clever dude, he can get around that.
If I'm fighting him, though, I'm not really concerned.
Sure. Yes, as somebody pointed out, the mammoth. Yes, he's on that same base, as is the big dinosaur, the big T-Rex from Seraphon. The name eludes me at the moment. But whatever. The 3 models that are on that 280.
Okay, that's fine.
Sure. The 3 things you're never going to see or fight. Yes. Okay. So we shouldn't leave here without talking about Squig Lure. Squig Lure is a casting value of 5. Obviously, this is for your Squig-focused armies, right? And if you cast it successfully, you get D3 friendly Squig units wholly within 18 inches. Not too bad. And those units can run and still charge later in the same turn. Obviously, very powerful, especially for like your bounders, which we're going to talk about later, because you want those guys getting into the enemy as soon as possible.
It gives the effects of the moon, because this is what the moon does for you. And so basically, when you don't have the moon, this helps shore up that weakness.
I would point out that, like, the moon's effect to grant this is also highly limited, okay? Because it's if all the models in a friendly Squig unit are affected by the light of the bad moon at the start of your charge phase. Meaning if you're like, if the moon is in a table quadrant and you like Tokyo drift one Squig, right, outside of that exact quadrant line, it shuts off for that unit.
Right.
Whereas this is obviously far less caring about that sort of thing.
My pushback, but we can't move on without talking. Like, I hear that, Vince. We can't move on without talking about the Hand of Gork. I would argue that this is the most significant spell in their like, I was expecting somebody else to do this one, but I'll do it.
Let's do the Hand of Gork. Yes, no, I agree.
It's a casting value of 7. Pick one friendly Gloomspite Gitz unit, which is basically anything. So in the Gloomspite Gitz bingo game that we're playing, this is the centerpiece. It can be any unit.
Yes, this is your center square. Yeah, good reference. I like it.
You can pick a unit wholly within 24 inches of caster, visible to them more than 3 inches from an enemy, so you can't pull people out of combat. That's important for this. But you remove the unit from the battlefield, set it up anywhere else on the battlefield 9 inches away from the enemy. They can't move in the movement phase. Wow. This thing is fantastic. Because this gives them castable deep strike. That's what this is.
Dan, is this the #1 spell being chosen every time by people playing this army?
It's in every list I've seen.
Okay. I almost can't imagine a list not having this, given what it's allowing you to do. This
is the single reason that people are probably going to be taking the Cauldron. And we'll talk about the Cauldron here in a minute, because this single-handedly gives any wizard in the army the ability to cast this. Like, it is that good. Pick up any unit, troll unit, spider unit, Ragnarok, put them at 9 inches. 30-man strong spider unit.
Sure. That's insanity what you just said, but sure. Yeah, I mean, I agree, Dan. I think this is like
1,000 points.
This is the hot pick, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It is really good. It is really good. All right, how do I say this? Do the Spider Fang spells kind of suck?
What I'll say is this. There's actually a total of 3 that I like. And I don't ever really see myself running more than 3 casters.
Okay.
The 3 that I like are Hand of Gork. I'm a big fan of Itchy Nuisance. Or not Itchy, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. I'm a big fan of Venomous Spiderlings. Okay. Spiderlings is pick an enemy within 12 inches of the caster. Roll number of dice equal to the number of models in the unit. For each 6+, they suffer 1 mortal wound.
Yep. Okay.
And so it gives one of your casters
your ability on a shorter range. Yes.
Right. Or the Medusa stare ability. But
that's on a 5-up. The appropriate reference here is the Grey Seer spell on a shorter range. That's on a 6-up.
Grey Seer on a shorter range. Sure. Okay. I'll take that. And then the other one I like is I actually like the Gifted the Spider God. It's a cast of 8, but again, that's not as big of a deal in the Spider-Fang armies because it's not hard to get a +2 to cast.
Mm-hmm.
And you pick a friendly Spider-Fang monster within 12, so you pick one of your Arachnaroks, and you can heal them a D6 wounds.
Yep.
A D6 damage.
Yeah.
Castable D6 heal.
Yeah. My argument is going to be this. I think there's actually several good spider spells. Okay. I don't think they suck. I was setting up a false question. I don't think they suck. I actually just think that the Moon Clan spells are like really, really good, and eclipse the spider spells almost to a point. Although that being said, like you know, Scuttling Terror gives you a run and shoot or run and charge, also good. I mean, certainly, like just striking in hard with your mortal wound causing spiders is never a bad thing, and being able to run them is pretty solid. Dan, any final thoughts on spells before we move out of here?
Yeah, going with the spiders. I like Curse of the Spider God as well. The picking an enemy unit within 24 inches until the next hero phases. Hit rolls are 1 rather than just 1 as well. So if you were running this as part of a debuff list, then this is just one additional way of reducing the volume of attacks which are coming in at you.
How often are you fighting units that either hit or save on an unmodified 2? Like, it exists. Don't get me wrong. Like, the Mega Boss on Maw Crusher has some 2-ups. Like, several like big monsters like that have 2-up type hits, right? Scar, Bloodwrath, or whatever. Like, these units exist. My problem with this spell is it sounds really cool because it turns 2s into, unmodified 2s into failures, right? My problem is like, it's so you could easily go 3 rounds in a tournament, and the enemy armies could have no units that hit on an unmodified 2.
But
right.
But what this makes is that, like, for your Star Drake that you're facing down, who has bonuses to save, right? Their 1s and 2s will always fail, right? That's what this does.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. You're saying like, so if they're in a situation,
right?
That's
if they
fair
save on a 2+, this makes them always fail on a 1 or a 2. It doubles your number of damage that's going to get through on that unit always.
Well, it's not that they're saving on a 2+. It's that their save is a 3, right? Your point is that they have. Yeah,
on natural unmodified 2s,
it still moves to the failure pile, and the +1 never gets to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's fair. I hadn't really thought that through because I was thinking like Mystic Shield and reroll type of crap, right? I wasn't honestly thinking of like the Castellan's bonus or Lantern and crap like that. Yeah, it's still out there. It's fair.
Anti-Stormcast buff. Now,
all right. You're winning me back over.
I think it's still pretty useless because if I have this, I'm in an army that mortals on 5s. I'm gonna melt any Stormcast I run into anyways.
Sure.
So, like what the dragon? Like, okay, like let's see how well he stands up against Mr. Gigantic Spider on 4 plus a D3 mortals.
Sure. All right. So with all that done, let's move on past spells. Let's get to the units. Let's do some hot picks. I feel it is necessary, gentlemen, that we begin this discussion with the only place we could start with this army, and that is with Scragrot, the Loon King, the Moon King, the Moon Boss, the big Looney Tune himself. Okay, as you mentioned at the beginning, Dan, he's a 220-point model. Talking about real quick, we'll cover some interesting things about him here. I'm gonna rifle through stuff really fast. All right, here we go. 6 wound model with a 5-up save, but he's got a 4-up feel no pain. Okay. He has Damoon on a stick as both a shooty weapon and a stabby weapon. What's interesting, as a shooty weapon, it's got a 28-inch range and makes 6 attacks. on 3s and 3s, neg 1, rend 1 damage. What's relevant?
Weapon.
What's that?
He's a siege weapon.
He has a siege weapon, yes. And what's relevant about him in this case is that if any wounds inflicted by Damoon on a stick are allocated to an enemy model and not negated, that model suffers 1 mortal wound at the end of each battle round, even if the wounds inflicted by Damoon on a stick are subsequently healed. Which tells me that the appropriate tactic for Damoon on a stick is to point him out, to point that stick across the battlefield and split his 6 attacks amongst every enemy hero they have. Okay? Like if they have 4 heroes, each of them gets 1 shot from Damoon on a stick, and 2 of them get 2 shots, whatever the 2 most you want to kill are, right? And you roll it out, and you hope to cause a wound. Because if you cause a wound, that hero is now on the clock. If they have no healing ability, that hero is just now dying. Right? Every battle round, they're dying. And you can keep wounding them. You can keep going on with your life. But, that's it. They're on the clock now. They will be dead. Right? Depending on the number of wounds they have. Especially 5-wound heroes. Because you caused 1 to start this. So now they're on the clock. You're just weakening them and weakening them and weakening them. And notably, by the way, the Bad Moon can also cause mortal wounds. So if the enemies are in the light of the Bad Moon, right? So this provides you an interesting opportunity to start just cracking out little 5-wound heroes hiding amongst their lines.
Because the enemy of the Bad Moon, you have to roll you'd have to roll 1 on a 1d6 in order to affect them.
Oh yeah, okay, great.
That's a lot less likely, is what I would say.
I understand.
But what I would say is this: that ability is so sexy. It's so good. Hold
on, let me get through the other things about him here.
Yeah, finish.
Also relevantly, he always adds 1 to his casting and unbinding because of his crown. His spell is Nick It, which has a casting value of 8, which obviously then he's hitting on a 7 on a dice, assuming nothing else because he has his own built-in +1. And if successfully cast, you pick 1 enemy model within 18 inches. The unit that model belongs to suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, if that model has an artifact of power and the casting roll is a 10+, meaning if you roll a 9 on the dice because he has a built-in +1, the model's artifact of power can no longer be used. If it was used to enhance a weapon, that weapon reverts to its normal form. This leads us to FAQ number 3 or 4, whatever one we're on, which is, does that hero still get to count the now non-functional artifact of power for the relevant two new scenarios that care about heroes with artifacts of power? I don't know what the answer is. Needs an FAQ. And then he has a command ability too, which once per battle, this is the most relevant because this is your moon control. Once per battle, if he is your general, meaning you're not getting a command trait anymore, so all those things we talked about earlier, those are out, right? Before you roll the die to determine how far the Bad Moon moves that next battle round, you can blow this, and if you do so, you choose how the Bad Moon moves, 0, 1, or 2. So if it's in the center, you can hold it there. If it's in the corner, you can move it to the center, and so on and so forth. It should also be noted that if he is your general, so again, you're not getting those command traits we talked about earlier. At the start of your hero phase, you roll a die, and on a 4+, you get D3 extra command points every round.
God, he's so sexy.
All right.
20 points. Do 20.
Yeah. So Dan, what's your feelings on Scragrot?
He's in every list that I have seen that isn't a spider list.
Wow. Now, have you seen any troll lists?
Yes. No, and he wasn't. To be fair, he is not in a troll list, as you would imagine. No, the flexibility and the options that he gives you mean that if you're going to be taking what I think you're going to see, which is mixed Moon Clan squig lists, the strongest option, then you're going to take Scragrot to lead that force. The question then comes, well, what do you do about your Loom Boss on Mangler Squig? And at that point, you then go, well, I'll take a doppelganger Coke on him rather than fight another day. And I'll just have him as a throwaway sort of distraction combat piece rolling up the side of the lines. But no, Scragrot just gives you so many options to add into your army.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a real point of tension depending on your build because he does sort of like bifurcate your build immediately. I think the first question you almost have to ask when you're building an army is it a Scragrod army or not? Right? This army has some quite compelling command traits, right? Like we went through 2 rounds on that list of things that are all, interesting, decent, right? And like to me, when we'll talk about this more when we get into the list stuff, but it's like if you're mainly goblin focused, I can't picture this guy not being in your list. If you're squig focused, I can picture like a 60-40 or 70-30 split of this guy being in there, and sometimes people and the alternate being the loon boss on Mangler, right? If you're spider focused, he's probably not there. If you're troll focused, he's probably not there. And those are kind of like there's sort of 4 lists there, and in the broadest terms, there's a lot of different things we could talk about beneath that. But in the broadest terms, like, that's this guy presents you with your first real hard choice you got to make. I don't think he's like auto include. You can't build a list without him, but I think he is potent as heck. And by the by, as somebody already mentioned in the comments, he's fair. He has a lot of opportunity cost, but I wouldn't be super shocked if he went to like 240 come GHB 19 or something, right? Like that could happen. So
yeah, he's my favorite Iron Jaws ally.
Okay,
we'll talk about. I'll talk about that near the end. But
sure.
This dude packs in a whole lot for 220. Let's say that.
Sure. Yep. Any other thoughts on the Loon King, Dan? Any other things you want to share there?
No, I think we've covered it.
All right, we're not gonna like Dan. What's your go ahead? You give us a hot pick. What unit has grabbed your eye? Who's the when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie? What unit has grabbed it?
I will go again with the Loon Boss on Mangler Squig.
Yep, we can get into that guy now. He's good.
And it's been covered enough in every show so far. But you're looking at a 300-point model. It can be your general with Fight Another Day. Can be the basis around which your Squig army gets built around. And at 300 points. So you can have 2 potent combat threats bouncing towards the enemy's lines at rapid speed.
Yeah, Absolute Beater has a fantastic wounds chart that like somehow gets worse and then better, right? Like it's an inverted wounds chart where like if he's in the 5 to 7 range, he's kind of sucky, but then like as you wound him more, he starts getting awesome again. Has a stackable command ability to like bonus the crap out of wound rolls. Yeah, he's pretty brutal.
Most Squig units are going to be wounding on 3s, so you're not going to get too much on benefit from stacking it unless you are facing, I think, listening to Rob's show, they mentioned it, and it was sort of Phoenixes and Fiends that have got have debuffs on wounds, so it's useful counter for those. I just like the things that you can put on him. You Fight Another Day, so he bounces in and out. I was thinking about realm artifacts, and if you're going for the second loon boss, whether you just go completely kamikaze option on that one and put Sword of Judgment on the Moon Cutter. You got 5 attacks with the go full kamikaze with rerolls, and you use the red cap mushrooms for that one turn in the game when you hit that key hero or monster, and you just blow it off the board.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, on the stacking thing, it is the whole unit that gets affected. So like the goblins on top of like Squig Hoppers and Boingrot Bounders are on like 4s or 5s to wound. So you can buff them down to 2s as well.
Yeah.
I don't know how super useful that is, but it's a thing. It's fine. Again, this army could be in a situation where it just has all the command points. So, hey, why not? Right? Why not make your goblins wound on 2s? Let them live the dream, Dan. Why don't you want the goblins to wound on 2s, Dan?
I would say this is the most, I would argue that his command ability is the best of the usable ones for like command points. Like everything else, I am not too impressed with across the board. Like the Spider Fang one is junk. Most of them are junk unless you're doing like the foot goblin with huge blocks of grots, or I would argue the Mangler hero.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like the regular Loon Boss and the Loon Boss with Giant Cave Squig. I think both
what
are.
I just said.
Yeah,
with
are
large units
decent.
of Grots.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
decent.
fair. Yeah, I agree. Like we'll talk about army builds, but that's a hot take. Dude's an absolute wrecking ball. I back this 100%. Tom, would you like to talk about bounders right now? Can we talk about bounders?
I
Dying
literally
to
just
talk about these bounders. Can we
pulled
please?
open this scroll.
All right. Good. God.
This
Get to the
is
bounders.
the most undercosted unit since Sequiturs.
This is the most efficient unit in the book. Maybe the most efficient unit in AoS right now.
Like when I opened the book, I just turned to bounders.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened. Because you have 100-point unit.
These things are insane.
This just makes me giggle. You have a 100-point unit that has 10 wounds on a 4+ save.
Mm-hmm.
That is sporting 20 attacks.
Yep, that's right.
And all those attacks have rend.
Yep, every one.
Every single one of
not
those.
Not conditional, always.
Always have rend.
Yep.
And when they charge, you have you do a 50% of the model count in mortal wounds. So 2.5 mortal wounds on the model count.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you can
oh, and it flies.
And they fly. That's right. Yep. They fly and they also, by the way, your little pokey stabbers have their own little built-in +1 to wound when they charge.
Yeah, and 2-inch reach on the lances. What? 2 inches?
Yep. And they can pull like the evocator trick where they charge a unit, have one guy within 1 inch of a second unit, and like
dump all their mortal wounds into that guy.
Right, and dump all their mortal wounds to the left while stabbing the unit in front of them.
Yeah, it's I move over witch elves. They are so efficient.
Let's not get crazy here. Let's not. These guys are really good.
You can it is not outside the realm of possibility to run 3 units of 15 of these.
Mm-hmm, sure. They are unbelievably efficient. Yes.
And I can't even. These guys are just they're the only infantry, they're the only infantry unit that's a non-hero on a 4+ save in the book.
Sure.
None of the trolls have a 4+ save that are on foot. None of the other non-heroes have a 4+ save. They are your animal.
Other than generic manglers, but I understand what you mean.
Yeah, but they're a monster. I'm talking about an infantry, a models on the table, where you have units of that can take objectives. Their only drawback is their 2d6 move.
Yeah.
So it's unreliable. But they fit in a very efficient battalion that lets you re-roll those dice.
I do love the crap out of these guys. I think they are fantastically undercosted.
You want to see something that's going to jump up 20 to 40 points in the next GHV? Yeah. These guys.
This one.
I agree.
Yeah. This one.
Agreed.
This one. I'm looking at a Squig army for Havoc next year. And I didn't even put these guys in my list. Of the list I'm concepting, because I'm I don't know where their points are going to go, but it's going to go up. I know that.
These guys for 300 points. They don't have any kind of horde discount, but 15 for 300 points. There's plenty of ability in between the battalion and the spells and stuff to bonus them, so they're still running and charging and doing other interesting things between getting them buffed, and you're just shooting these 300-point things, these 300-point relatively small units, right?
Yeah, on 32 mils, 15 models on 32 mils.
Right, not the smallest base. They're not 25s, which would be outrageously, insanely good, but still relatively small. And just plowing them into units and doing 7 to 8 mortal wounds on average, and then attacking, with 60 attacks, all with rend, all very easily potentially wounding on 2s, right?
Yep.
Yep.
They're so good. They're so good. I would not, if you are getting these, I would play them before the summer. Alternatively, I would not invest heavily in these guys. If you're going to buy some, buy 10 to 20. Don't buy any more, because they are going to go up in cost.
I support that. It's a strong call, but I support that. Dan, what do you think about the bounders?
Not much more to add.
Right.
I know some people have been playing with them and found that in the wrong matchup, like most things, they can bounce and dice go against you. But the sheer weight of return that these guys are going to give you over the course of 5 games in the tournament is just impressive. You put sneaky snufflers with them, you get an extra attack. You've got 90 attacks for your 15. You got the buff from the Loon Boss on Giant Cave Squig. You've got the Loon Boss on Mangler Squig buff that you can put on them, and they're going to be bouncing rapidly across the board and just slamming into whatever and taking it off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. These guys are super buffable, super synergistic, and super deadly, even on their own scroll at a wildly reasonable cost. Like, yeah. Founders is good.
They so good. It should be noted they do not have the grot keyword.
They do not. That is right. But they can benefit from the Snufflers because Snufflers only need Moon Clan units.
Yes. Snufflers need Moon Clan. They cannot benefit from the Spore Splatters because Spore Splatters need Moon Clan grots.
Yep.
So just a heads up.
So let's transition and we'll talk about the 2 buffing units, shall we? Because we've mentioned them several times and we can get these guys out there. Because I see one of the 2 of these showing up in a lot of armies.
Yep.
So we got sneaky Snufflers. They're the little truffle pig squigs. And we got the Spore Splatter Fanatics. Dan, you want to walk us through these 2 and kind of talk about them and their role and, the limitations on each?
Sure. So sneaky snufflers, these lovable new characters with the long nose squigs.
I love them. They're awesome models.
They are great models. I saw Paul just loving the spider backpacks, arachna backpacks, and the main ability is that at the start of the movement phase, you can say that they're harvesting loon cap mushrooms, and if they do so, they can't move, but you can roll a dice. If the roll is less than or equal to the number of models in the unit, then you pick one friendly Moon Clan unit wholly within 12 inches of the unit and add 1 to the attack's characteristic of melee weapons, all melee weapons used by that unit until your next movement phase. You can do it several times. If you do more than once in the same turn, then that unit suffers 2d6 mortal wounds each time you pick it an additional time. So if you've got multiple units of snufflers.
Yep. And I think the relevant part to understand about the sneaky snufflers is there's 5 of them for 70 points. So if you just had the basic unit and they're not, wounded or shot out, then basically you'll succeed that roll on anything but a 6, right? And you can just sort of pass out this +1.
2 unique synergies with these guys. The first is that you can Hand of Gork them into position.
Sure.
So pick it up, teleport it across the table, put it in position, and then you don't need to move it because you're not allowed to move it because of Hand of Gork, but it doesn't matter because now you can not move anyways and buff. So you can Hand of Gork these guys into position.
I was going to say the one limiting factor of these guys is the fact that you are a 5-inch move and you're going to be trailing along behind your main force when you want them.
Yep. And so you can Hand of Gork, so you can fix that problem with Hand of Gork. And then the other thing I would say is that if you have a unit that is of goblins, of grots, that you need to get rid of, like you're down low on models and you want to respawn it in your backfield or across table at the shrine.
Sure. Yep.
You can just overdose them on mushrooms, kill out the unit, and then bring it back at the end of the turn at the loon shrine.
Sure. If your opponent's trying to be sneaky and leave you with 4 goblins alive and then running away, you can just ace them with a double application of Snuffler juice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very goblin way to approach these things.
Absolutely. Look, I'm not letting my potential 30 goblins go to waste because I got 4 useless goblins still alive. See you later, guys. There you go. All right. So, Dan, lead us through the Spore Splatters.
Sure. I was just going to say the last thing on the Snufflers was that you can foresee a build or a play style where if you've got a mixed Moon Clan squig list that you use Hand of Gork first turn to chuck 60 goblins across to hold up to the enemy. You move your squig units up across into the middle of the board because you're going to benefit from the moon in turn 2 and 3. So mid-game is when you want to get that benefit. And then you do your Hand of Gork on the Snufflers to bring them up, to keep them up to speed with the rest of your squigs.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to talk about Goblin High Tide, right? Because
Yeah.
it's sort of a thing. Like there are builds of this army where you're playing like Idnet Thiefkin and you're going for like Goblin High Tide. Yeah.
So moving on to Spore Splatters. So the new Fnatic, they do a couple of things which are useful and rules dynamics that we don't see often. So Pushroom Frenzy is the first one. So at the start of your hero phase, very useful timing, start of your hero phase. Friendly Moonclan Grot units wholly within 12 inches of any friendly units with this ability become frenzied until your next hero phase. Add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons used by frenzy units. So happens at the start of the hero phase, apply it to them, and then move them magic or otherwise across the board as you need them. But beware of the Moonclan Grots keyword and the limitation that comes with it.
Yep, and there is a lot less Moonclan Grots in this book than you think.
Yep.
That may as well say foot heroes and stabbers and shooters. That's what that says.
Pretty much.
It's stabbers, right?
Yeah, it's stabbers. Yeah,
it's stabbers. Just replace the word. Put stabber unit.
Sure.
The other interesting thing is the Spore Cloud. And being a Sylvaneth player, I love me some line of sight blocking. So basically what this is the Spore Splatters act as a line of sight blocking screen for units behind them. So the actual wording is that models are not visible to each other if an imaginary straight line 1 millimeter wide drawn between the closest points of the two models crosses over this unit or passes within 1 inch of this unit. But it does not apply if either the models the line is drawn between is a model from this unit, a model that can fly, or a monster. So the enemy can feel free to shoot away your spore splatters, but they're not going to be shooting either your casters, your Scragrot, your Loonboss and Mangler Squig that you've deployed behind this shield to then jump out over the top of. So he's hitting it.
Well, you can shoot models that fly, and the Spangler Squig does fly.
True. Sorry. Yeah. You can't do that.
Yeah. Interestingly, the Spore Splatters can't screen any of your like squig sort of hopper units, right? Like your basic squig hoppers, your bounders, or your manglers, because they're all, well, first of all, the big manglers are monsters, but also all that crap flies because of its bouncy.
I have to imagine that was intentional. Like
I'm sure
that's why they got the fly keyword rather than they function as flying when they move.
Oh, yeah.
Like
it has to be that way around.
Yeah. I imagine that is
because
one of the
it's not
reasons.
like they've just picked up the wording from the Citadel Wood Scroll.
Right, right. Yep.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a more interesting way with exceptions to do of something that's not just arbitrary blocking all line of sight, right? Like there are ways around it. I actually appreciate the nuance because then if you know what you're dealing with, you can get around it. It should also be pointed out that like these guys, these like Spore Splatter fanatics, I'll be completely honest. Right now, as it stands, these are guys that like, my read on it is I'm not sure they're going to show up in a lot of lists.
No.
Okay.
Heavy goblin lists.
Even maybe like just cost wise, it's going to be hard to fit them in. They're 5 for 120. And these are 1 wound models on a 6-up. Right now, they have the whole whirling death thing where they always fight first, but they're like far less dangerous in melee than the Loon Smashes. Right.
Yeah. You don't want them fighting.
Right. Exactly. Like I would be willing to put something in a melee just to clean these out or just shoot them. Like any kind of shooting will just peel these guys out. Right. Because like it takes almost nothing to just peel these guys off the table. Because they're 5 wounds on a 6-up save, and that's it. Right. So for 120 points, it's not insignificant. Like you pay for this ability to somewhat screen and to bonus attack, right? So they're an interesting option, but I feel like they're often going to be dealt with quickly, is what I'll say. So, okay, cool. Do we have any other thoughts on those? All right.
Enough.
They are good. They're good enough. Right on. Any other like hot picks we want to talk about before we go to battalions?
I mean, what I would say is I think the rock guts are the hidden gem. You know, we've talked about this. Doom and Darkness had a wonderful video about this. They are, I would argue, one of the best anvils in the army.
Yeah.
Because they're actually sitting on a 5-up, 5-up.
Right.
Like they have a 5-up, feel no pain. And so, like, running a block of 9 of these guys, it's super punchy. So it's scary. It's a -2 Ren, 3 damage, like, block of troops. That it's not too many models at 9. Your footprint's going to push off most objectives. They're hard. They can take a beating, and they're gonna regenerate.
Yeah, I love these dudes, and at 3 of them for 160, I think they're an exceptionally good buy. Yeah. Dan, any thoughts on the rock guts? Do you like both? I kind of like both the trolls. I think I like the rock guts a little better. Where are you coming down on the trolls, Dan?
I like both. I can see both being taken in troll armies. I like the little bit of a missile attack on the rock guts. Yeah, it's good. People that are going to play a whole troll army are playing it because they love the models and they want big stumpy trolls.
Right.
But you have got an anvil. Do we think we're going to see units of 6 rock guts in mixed Moonclan squig armies, or are we going to just not have enough points left over to have or a need for an anvil unit, given we can have 60 stabbers or whatever?
My argument would be I think 9 are a good anvil in a spider army. Spider-focused armies are just like laser guided missiles of destruction with no anvils whatsoever. Like the ability to hold a point in a spider army is almost non-existent. Yep. And 9 of these dudes will do the work. Would be my argument. Better, and I think better than a bunch of goblins, because you don't necessarily have the right tools to support them in a heavy spider focused army, right? Than just getting a pack of goblins.
Yeah, no. Right.
Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead.
If you're putting something into the spider army, it needs to be standalone. Right. It needs to be able to do its job without support and buffs, because of the way that this battletome is set up, in terms of some but limited crossover between the 3 main factions within it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. The spider group is very insular. They all want to get in and buff each other and have a lot of synergy within each other. So like just throw in and 60 goblins unbuffed, unsupported are just hot trash. Like netters alone do not make those guys live. They'll just get peeled like a sour grape. Whereas the Troggoths will just kind of stand out there and take care of themselves.
And still have -2 rend.
Yeah. They can also yes, they can win attrition battles, right? If something comes in on them, they can actually grind it down. I think they are better than Fellwater because of the rend on the melee attack, the higher damage on the melee attack, and the feel no pain to me is far more useful than the -1 to hit. The feel no pain save protects them from being mortaled off as well.
Yep. Yeah, so somebody had asked me what is the best low model count army, like competitive low model count army, and I think the answer to that is a modified spider army with a block of 9 trolls. And actually, like for my first playable 2,000 point list, that's what I'm going to be running, is mostly spiders with 9 trolls.
Yeah. All right. Cool. There's tons more goblins, and we'll probably come to some of them when we talk about lists. All right, so let's use battalions, gentlemen, to transfer this conversation into some like nascent lists, combos, power builds, just whatever you want to talk about, however you want to think about it, right? Fun synergies. Let's start putting some pieces together here through the lens of battalions, because these guys have a lot of different battalion options, right? This is actually, I really like the design on the battalions in here. I think a lot of them are very compelling. I think they give you enough options, and they're priced, reasonably well. They all feel pretty good. There's a couple that are expensive, but for the most part, good. All right.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Like the fact that you've got a couple of 1-drop options, you've got which aren't just the crazy mega battalions you'll only ever play.
They're real one-drop options, like takeable in a real army.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Real one-drop options. And you've got battalions which will cover a small part of your force. So we'll give you the benefit of an extra command point, give you the extra artifact. They're not ridiculously expensive. They give you a buff which is actually useful for the units that you're taking it in. And you're lowering your drops. So you're going down from 10 drops or whatever to 7 or 6. And you might, in the current sort of tournament meta, depending on your local scene, you might still be getting choice at 6 and 7 drops.
Yeah, agreed. And I will say, like, without these battalions, this army can often tend toward like ultra high drops, depending on how you build. Like if you end up taking like the Goblin Hero crew we didn't talk about, right? Like the Scaremonger and the Brugit and the Shrewmancer and all those dudes. If you don't then take Gabapalooza, that's 5 drops right there. Just those dudes.
Yep, 240 points, 5 drops.
Right. So like this army can just like rocket into high drops. All right, so Dan, why don't you pitch us something? Pitch us, like a list, something around a battalion. Walk us through something here. What do you like? What's a combo that you like? A synergy, a strat, something like that you like through the lens of one of these battalions?
Sure. Okay. Well, as I've been dealing with squigs all afternoon, I'll do the squig version. So the squig version is to take the combination of the Squig Rider Stampede and the Squig Launch.
Yep.
So which is your 1-drop and a viable 1-drop. So your Squig Rider Stampede is 2 to 3 units of Squig Hoppers, or realistically Bounders.
Right.
Ignore the words in any combination. And then 0 to 1.
For right now, like 10 points is not buying me into those crappier hoppers. I'm just, okay. Keep going. I agree.
Yeah. And then 0 to 1 Mangler Squigs. Again, you probably won't see Mangler Squigs, vanilla Mangler Squigs on their own, but the ability is that you can re-roll the roll that determines the move characteristic of units from this battalion. So it's just helping you get your bounders across the board. The Squig Launch is made up of a whole range of units which you're going to be taking anyway, probably. You've got 1 Loon Boss on Mangler Squig or 1 Loon Boss on Giant Cave Squig. You've then got 0 to 3 Loon Bosses on Giant Cave Squig. I think you'll see builds where you have 1 Loon Boss on Mangler Squig and 1 on Giant Cave Squig for the different benefits they give the rest of your Squig units.
Yep.
1 plus Squig Rider Stampede, 1 to 3 Mangler Squigs, so this is where you have to bring that in. And then 0 to 2 Squig Herd units. And you're going to have Squig Herd units because you've got your Loon Boss as your general, so you're going to have your Squig Herd as your battle line.
By the way, it's worth noting that if you their battle line with Moon Clan, not battle line with Squigs, are battle line with Moon Clan, not battle line with the
They don't need the loon. Yes, they don't need the.
They don't need the Loon Boss. And the reason why I say this and why this is significant is because you can have Squig Herd as your battle line with Scragrod. So if you wanted to do like a hybrid list, you can use the Squig Herd as your like battle line selection there.
Yeah, so it's a Squig Army plus Scragrod, effectively, in that way.
Yep.
The ability that it gives you with the Squig Launch is that if the light of the Battle Moon affects a unit from the battalion at the start of the combat phase, then you can fight. You're eligible to fight if you're 6 inches from an enemy unit instead of 3, and you can move the extra 3 inches when you pile in. So 6 inch pile. Good. So good. Especially when you start thinking about combinations where you are doing damage in the charge phase and you're then wiping out the unit in front, and you now need the longer pile in to get to the unit that's behind the screening unit, or to move into a secondary target. So good. So that effectively means that you're running a list which is the Loon Boss on Mangler Squig, a Loon Boss on Giant Cave Squig. You've got maybe a couple of units of Boingrots. You've got 1 Mangler Squig, 3 units of Squig Herd. And that's probably about it. I haven't actually totted up the points. The key things that you're leaving out are Snufflers. You can't take Snufflers in that and keep it a 1-drop. So you lose that benefit. but you pretty much get every other benefit that you want for a squig army in there.
Yeah,
You
I think
could
the
be
only I think the only real limitation to this is you can't fit all your battle line in the 1-drop unless you take a unit of squig hoppers and have one of the loon boss on manglers as your general, right? Because you only get 0 to 2 squig herds, but the regular hoppers do become battle line if you've got like either of the loon boss on squig or on mangler. So which is like, that is the argument to taking in the 2 to 3 of bounders. You'd have like 2 bounders and 1 regular hoppers just to satisfy your battle line. And then you stay like true 1-drop, right? And there you go.
But I will say that like you could easily go to 4-drop and still beat 90% of the meta. Like in the current Masters list that have been submitted for the UK, if you are 4-drop, you're going to beat everything but the Sylvaneth lists.
Yeah, and this is the thing: is you do the push to see if you can get a 1-drop, and then you go, well, actually, do we need it? The sort of 4-drop version of this gives you, I would say, more valuable, powerful options than the straight 1-drop. And the reality is that this army, what do you use 1-drops for? You use 1-drops to out-deploy. You use 1-drops to alpha strike. You do 1-drops for these kind of things. You're not going to be getting your squiggle launch across the board on turn 1.
Nor do you want to.
No. You want to be playing Goblin Gloomspite High Tide.
Right.
So yeah, a 4-drop version of it would be better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like when you go up to 4-drop, there's all sorts of different ways you can spread out this list. Like you could go to a Scragrot version where you then pull in some different, you have to pull in another battle line as well, because you don't have the hoppers, but you can go to that kind of a mix. It should be pointed out that the 1-drop and like the mega battalion and the normal battalion are only 230 points total of battalion expenditure, which is not bad in this army that is like overflowing with cheap unit options, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like you're burning. I mean, I burned 300 points all the time in my Iron Jaws to do this, right? And they're getting it 70 cheaper. You can get in a unit of snufflers and stuff like that, and there you go. Right, like suddenly your options have just like exploded all over the place, right?
We didn't talk about this, but I want to briefly mention, since it's appropriate here, how efficient squig herd units are. They're 70 points for 12 wounds, which means that a max size squig herd unit at 280 points is clocking in at 56 wounds. Or heaven forbid that you actually go with the full squig herd max, like all of your battle line are max squig herd units, right? You can actually sit at so for 840 points, you can get all your battle line out of the way, right? And actually be at like 144 wounds in just squigs, like in just meat.
Sure. Obviously, the drawback is that old bravery 3 number. So, you want to make sure you've got the extra command points.
Yeah, as long as you're not against the Shrieker host.
Like, I'm just saying, make sure you got some heroes standing around, because these guys are going to die. They're like, that whole unit's on a 6-up save. Yes, they're 2 wounds, but they're on a 6-up save with no other defenses.
So that's why I called it meat. It's meat. Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. You got to be careful with squig herds. If you don't have them sheltered, they will just explode real fast.
Which they're want to do anyways. But
anyways.
Yeah.
All right.
But no, I haven't actually worked out how quickly that army can move across the table. But once you add in the +3 move on the Loon Boss on Giant Cave Squig, you got the run and charge spell with the Squiggler. If you were going for the 4-drop version, and then the Bad Moon run and charge, and the rerolls from the battalions, you're going to be moving across the board very quickly.
Yeah, it turns what would normally be like a 5-inch move unit and a bunch of 2d6 move units, or 3d6 maybe, into like, a heck of a lot faster than that.
Well, the hero on Gigantic Squig is going to be at +3 to moves as well.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like it gets a heck of a lot faster very quickly. All right. Tom, you want to trot out some synergies or some nascent lists? We already talked about, let's call it the Captain Smash Mortal Wound Goblin. right? Who's doing all these 8 attacks, 5 up, 4 wounds plus D3 mortal wounds per that blah 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 nonsense.
You're saying the spiders?
Yeah, I mean, whatever. You can talk about whatever list you want. What else you got?
Yeah, I mean, what
Let's
I would
talk
say
about
is
some
that,
power
like,
pairs, some synergy, some fun stuff.
So I love the spider, like, so the default spider the spider battalion, let me say it that way, is the Spider Rider Skitter Swarm. It is clocking at 120. It's a scuttle boss, 0 to 1 scuttle boss, which you're always going to take in this battalion. And 3+ units of Spider Riders. Significant here is that you can 1-drop with all spiders to do this, like, for fairly cheap, just by like all of the spiders. I think I did the math, and you can do like 2 30 blocks and one of the big bosses, and then some like 10 blocks, and like single drop, and just have all the spiders. It'd be delightful. It'd be insane. And the battalion just adds a flat 2-inch to the movement of the spiders, so it moves them from 10s to 12s, which is not too shabby. It's a great, like, battalion. I would even argue at 1,000 points, or it could obviously 2,000. It becomes one of the staples of the Mega Battalion. The problem with the Spider Mega Battalion is it forces you to take a second battalion, the Arachnarok Battalion.
Yeah.
The Arachnarok Spider Cluster, which is 2 to 4 of either the Flinger or the War Party Arachnaroks, and then 1 of the Ambushing Arachnaroks.
Well, 0 to 1. You don't have to have the ambush.
0 to 1. You don't have to have the ambusher. And this other battalion gives like reroll 1s to hits for attacks in the battalion, as long as we're within 6 inches of another model from the same battalion. And I think that's the big, like, downfall of the Spider Cluster, because it's really easy, like, killing out, like, if you only did 2 of the, like, normal Ragnaroks, killing out 1 of them and negates the benefits of the battalion. And it puts your points at like 330, I think, for the Mega Battalion, which is moving into Ironjaw's range, but still. And so that was the big kick for me, was that the Arachnarok, the caster Arachnarok, only shows up in the Mega Battalion. So drop spiders pretty easily with this battalion, and it gives you reroll 1s of save rolls for like everybody in the battalion. Which is everybody within 24 inches of a Spider Fang wizard, and you can get up to 3 wizards in the battalion. So it gives everybody Mystic Shield functionally.
Yeah, and we should talk about, since Flingers got mentioned here, we should talk about Flingers. We should talk about Arachnaroks in general, just very quickly, right? Yeah. So Arachnaroks have 4 distinct builds now, all costed differently, right?
Yes.
So you've got the Shaman Caster, who's your most expensive one at 300. You've got the 2 different sort of like goblin type builds, like the War Party, which is all the sort of stabber dudes, and then the Flinger, which is the one, the old launcher thing on the back, and then you've just got basically the Skitter Strand, which is just the spider, right? It's just that spider. And notably, the Flinger has an attack that is another access to making models strike last, but that I think is the definition of unreliable. I mean, maybe if you've got 2 of them, okay, right, then 75% of the time this hits. But basically with their Flinger, you don't use the normal attack sequence. Instead, you just basically roll a die. And you add 1 to the roll if the target unit has at least 5, and 2 to the roll if the target unit has at least 10 models. Okay. And on a 6+, the target unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Who cares? And that unit now has the fight last, right? Just like we talked about before with Itchy Nuisance. But like in your best case where you're targeting 10 up, sort of models or 10 up units, right? Units of tenors, as it were. You're still only hitting on a 4+.
Right. That's why you need 2 of these guys. If you have 2 of these guys, then you can basically have a 75% chance of affecting it, the target unit with strikes last.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'll say, if I was going to do the Mega Spider Battalion, where I'm like, barrel of a gun, forced to pick 2 of these things, I would take the 2 Flingers, just because why not? Right. Like,
right. It's only 20 points more, and you can kind of use that. What I would say is this. On one hand, like most of the competitive versions of spiders that I've like whipped up are not doing the Mega Battalion.
Right. It's just
They're just not. Yeah, it's just the Skitter Swarm. I will say that the caster spiders are super well costed at 300 points.
Definitely.
And they're broadcasting a +1 to cast to the other foot wizards. So that like whenever you're running spiders, they're going to be at a universal play, probably a +1 to cast. I want to mention now, we didn't do this, but I don't want to forget about this.
Okay.
And that's the endless spells. Can we talk about that now? Or do we want to come back to that?
It's fine. You can talk. Well, I was going to talk about them in the context of other stuff, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, the reason why I was going to say is the big sell for me, the big win. All of the endless spells are fantastic. I love the cauldron. Like I love the cauldron.
Disagree on all of the spells are fantastic, but continue.
Almost all the spells are fantastic.
Okay.
50 points for the 50 points for the cauldron. When you cast it, you have to do a D3 mortals, and you have to do a D3 mortals in every hero phase to a unit within 3 inches. We can talk about that. But what it does is it gives the caster +1 to cast, and it gives the caster access to the entire Lord of the Bad Moon.
Yep.
Which is just bonkers good, because what it does is in a spider army, it gives you access to the Lord of the Bad Moon without ever having to actually run any normal goblet grot wizards.
And it doesn't just give you access to a spell like your normal wizard would have. Right? It gives you access to the lore.
The lore. So what it does is your Ragnarok main caster goes to +2 to cast default, like generic when he's running around with this thing.
And 3 in the light of the Bad Moon.
3 in the light of the Bad Moon, and it gives him the teleporting and all that. And if you get that guy into combat, right? He's going to dish an additional D3 mortal wounds at the start of every hero phase, because it doesn't say that damage has to be to your units.
No,
it's just to any unit. And so he splashes a D3 mortals at the start of his hero phases to enemy units. And in spider armies, you can heal the Arachnaroks with the D6 healing spell. And so like any wounds that you are taking, potentially you can mitigate. So that cauldron is a gift to the spider fang armies, is what I would say. It's so good. It's so good. But yeah, so Spider Fang, they're of varying use. Vince came up with a really funny list that we were talking about of doing the haha, gotcha bitch list. Are
you going to talk about my pie in the face list?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll talk about my pie in the face list.
You since we're talking about spiders, you talk about your pie in the face.
All right, well, we'll come back to endless spells in a second. Dan, I have a comedy list to pitch for you. You ready?
Sure.
All right.
Always ready for one.
Okay, here's my comedy list. There is another battalion. It's called the Skitterstrand Nest. The Skitterstrand Nest is the goblinless spiders who can burrow. They can deep strike effectively, right? So they pop up 9 inches away from the enemy. Okay. The battalion is 2 to 3 Skitterstrand Arachnaroks. Okay. And the battalion itself is 110 points. So here's my list. You ready? It's 3 Skitterstrand Arachnaroks, the battalion, and Gordrak. And then just a bunch of goblins. Yep. Okay. Whatever, out of the rest. I don't care. Something that does battle line. We'll just call it goblins. It's fine. Whatever. Yep. This is generic destruction, obviously, because we're way outside of ally points as soon as we take Gordrak, right? And so this is my plan. I call it pie in the face because all 4 of these things, like Gordrak's on a pie plate, and so are all the Arachnaroks. This is all in the 160 mil base, commonly referred to as the pie in the face. So turn 1, you burrow all these guys up. And you hurl Gordrak forward, right? Like as best as you can. The generic destruction move would help if it triggers off, whatever, that's fine. The battalion ability is you add 1 to charge rolls for models from this battalion for each model from this battalion that was set up in the same turn. Yep. So if you set up all 3 Skitterstrands, you're +3 to charge, right? All right, so I burrow up my 3 guys 9 inches away, and then I fly Gordrak just as close as I can get him, and then I blow his command ability, right? Where you charge on 3d6, and everybody in a battalion, like he can pick it, if he picks somebody in a battalion, his command ability splashes to the whole battalion. So everybody in the battalion is rolling 3d6 to charge and getting +2 attacks to all of their profile, right? So to all the spider attacks. and you just literally shove 4 pie plates in their face at the top of one, and that's your army, just like 4 giant pies in the face into the enemy army at the top of the one. That is not a winning list, but it is funny. It's funny to me that I could just put like that'll block their whole line because they're just like this much space. It's so huge. The base. Oh, you cut out, Dan. I'm sorry. What'd you say?
I was just going to say that's a very funny list. I was actually going to mention one of the guys also from New Zealand who's going across for CanCon is running a Skitterstrand Nest army.
Yes.
So Seth Cook, it's not your pie in the face army. It's 2 Skitterstrands, the Skitterstrand Nest Battalion, and then normal stuff.
Sure.
Web Spinner on the Ragnarok, the ridiculous Scuttle Boss, Fungoid Cave Shaman, 2 units of 20 Stabbers, a unit of 15 Spider Riders, a unit of 10 Spider Riders, Cogs, and Cauldron.
I like it.
Nice. Love it.
I think Seth's going to do quite well with that.
Yeah, I dig that. It's just it occurred to me that you could pull off this ridiculous funny trick and that his command ability would work on it, and it made me laugh. So there you go. All right. So yeah, I think the Cauldron is quite powerful. One of the things we haven't talked about, it's a synergy worth highlighting because you just touched on it, Tom. And Dan, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this one. This army's ability to like stack magical casting bonus is off the charts, right? Like it's not every build,
insane.
but it is not out of the question that you could have casters running around, like most of your casters running around on +2 or +3 while simultaneously putting the enemy at -1 or -2, causing like this 4 to 6 point swing in the casting values, right? That's like Nagash killing magic power, right? That brings him down to size when you're outcasting him. That is an impressive amount of magical power. I mean, what's your thought on, do you think you're going to see lists where people really push like the magic bonus to 11 and really try to lean in on this?
Yeah, well, it's endless spells list. And the going with Scragrot, Fungoid Cave Shaman, a couple of Madcaps. If you're going for the Moon Clan sort of version, Madcaps being able to cast 2 spells, taking all of those advantages in one go. The spiders have got plenty of options with the Web Spinner on Arachnarok and then a couple of Web Spinner Shaman on foot around them. I can see people, and there's options out there. Is there many high offensive spells in the laws natively themselves? I can remember many jumping out as I was going through.
Right.
They're more, you're using them on to move other units around. So it's not like you're they're in a Zinch list or some of the Sylvaneth Mortal Wound lists or others where you're using the spells themselves to do the damage. You're using a number of spells to achieve other things, I think, in those magic heavy lists.
Yeah, I agree. This is also an army that benefits. We haven't touched on it yet, but it's worth mentioning, especially in this context. This is an army that like benefits a lot from the realms, right? Between the realm command abilities and just having like all the extra command points in the world you want to utilize those how you need to, between having casters that can stack insane bonuses all over the place. Right now, you got to build to this. Like, there's a significant investment in doing this magic list. You don't just fall into it. And by the way, it's sort of a house of cards, right? Because a lot of this magical supremacy is built on 4 wound heroes, right? Or something like that. So it's not like this is something that can't just be picked apart. It can. It's relying on a lot of little synergy on weak foundational elements. But if undisturbed, you can achieve sort of magic dominance. So, I mean, I think people playing against this are highly incentivized to go in there and disrupt your little 4 wound 6-up casters or whatever, you know. But it's really interesting to me because they will be able to really take advantage of like realm spells or the default realm spell, even if you're not using the full list or whatever, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's talk about endless spells real quick. You mentioned the Arachna Cauldron. So there's 4 endless spells. Dan, do you like all of the endless spells? Yes or no? And if no, what don't you like?
Yes, because then I don't have to justify why I don't like them. As he flips to the page in the book.
Sure.
Where he's getting there. I like all of them. Look, I can see all of them having a role, and they're all fairly useful. Like Moon is cheap and does more damage than Pendulum. Mushroom is perfect for armies which are large hordes camping on objectives. You just douse them in spores and turn them into fungus witch elves. And Cauldron's great for what it gives you, as long as you've got somewhere to pass off the wounds that you need to do. And Scuttle-Tide. So Scuttle-Tide is interesting. It's a massive base. I presume it's the same. I haven't seen one in the flesh, but I presume it's the same size as Gravetide. Or
Basically, it's like the 6-inch sort of thing, like 6-inch long thing.
Yeah, so no range on it, as long as it's 6 inches within the terrain feature. So you're presumably going to have lots of options of where to place it when you need it. And you're going to be doing mortal wounds to units that are nearby. And it has impact on your own army if you're taking it in a Spider Fang force.
Yeah. I think these are the best swing at the endless spells we've gotten yet. Okay.
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah, like compared to, say, Nighthaunt, Stormcast, Beast of Chaos, there is no question these are the best designed grouping we've got yet. That's like, I don't know who could argue that, okay?
Yeah.
Now, I will say I think the Moon is just like, unless you're going for like an ultimate caster stack build. Because the relevant thing about the Moon is, it does some damage, and like it's another minus to casters, right? Like it's -1 if you're within 9 inches of the Moon, and -2 if you're within 3 inches of the Moon. So like ostensibly you want to go park this thing next to an enemy wizard so that so that they suck during their hero phase, right? Because if they don't have like a hero phase teleport, they're just stuck standing next to this thing, and basically then are just completely neutered as far as their casting goes. Yeah. Unless they turn and dispel the thing. But again, that's, then they've got to make that roll, and you can fail that roll. They got to roll a 7. It is what it is. The Moon at 50 points is the one that like is the least impressive to me. Whatever. The mushrooms and what were you going to say?
I like it. I like the Moon. Like there are builds where I have put the Moon in. So like I'm willing to consider it, is what I would say. Yeah,
to me it's the most corner case one. Right. Sure. Like it wants a very specific army to be used.
Yep.
The mushroom to me, the mushroom bomb, the atomic mushroom bomb, right?
Yep.
Is like, to me, the one of just the most powerful, but it has a really interesting limitation. Okay. Yep. So it's only cast on a 6, and what it's doing is it's so destructive, right? You're setting it up, and after this model is set up, and at the start of each battle round, after it's set up, each unit within 8 inches of this model is enveloped by the mutating spores. For each unit that's enveloped, roll a number of dice equal to the number of models from that unit within 8 inches. On every 5 up, they suffer a mortal wound. Here's where we can bring in your Medusa Stare, right? Or your comparison to like the Gaunt Summoner or something like that, right?
Right.
Because you can plant this thing in the middle of 2 units, and it's going to hit both units. And however many models are within that 8-inch bubble, that's how many dice you're rolling, and every 5 up is immortal, right? It's a horde killer bomb.
Right. And what I say is it's terrifying because you can have this and the scuttling, the spider 6 up in the same army.
Sure. What's terrifying about this thing is it can easily double dip before they get a chance to actually do anything about it, right? Because if you go at the bottom of the round and you drop it, boom. And then we go to the next battle round, boom, right? So it can pop twice before they can react, quite easily, right? Now, the interesting limitation to this thing is that, which is a very clever limitation. I do have to give them full credit on this, right?
From a design standpoint, yeah.
From a design standpoint, it's such an elegant, interesting limitation. So obviously only Gloomspite Gitz wizards can cast this. I mean, that's not what I mean. It's just, I should state this for all these spells that are like that. You set up the mushroom model wholly within 6d6 inches of the caster, and it doesn't move. Right?
Yep.
So like, as somebody who played Skaven for 20 years and had a Doom Rocket that fired off like 66 inches or some number like that at various points, and was also a big atomic bomb you tried to drop on hordes, right? I will tell you that 66 number would sometimes let you down. You would very often not get what you wanted out of that Doom Rocket. Many times I threw that pie plate right into my own unit. It's a very interesting limitation. Sure, obviously, on average, it's 18 inches. Or 18 to 20 inches. Like, you can do that math. We can all math that out, right? You can say 3.5 times 6 or 3 times 6 if you want to be conservative or something. But that's average. And like 6 dice are quite swingy. And like there will be times where suddenly you only get, and it, by the way, at only an 8-inch bubble, you don't have to be that far off, right? For it to be considerably less effective.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
If you're trying to reach with it where like you need average for it to really be at its maximum effect, and you only get like a 13 instead of an 18, you just pulled a heck of a lot of models outside of that 8-inch reach. Right?
Sure, but there are ways around that.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying it's an interesting limitation.
It is. It's a case for spell mirror. Right?
Sure.
Like and what I mean by that is like you roll the range and then you determine if you need the spell mirror or not.
Right. It's funny.
Yeah.
Dan, what do you
Gork,
yeah.
I was just gonna say hand of Gork the madcap into the enemy lines.
Yes. Yes. This is the fun when you just like the suicide shaman play, right? Of like you hand of Gork the guy basically right in front of their line and then just toss this thing in the middle and be like, yeah, that dude's dead, whatever. Just boom, boom.
Can I give you an alternative idea?
Sure.
You hand of Gork a caster, a Ragnarok, that's carrying a Griff Feather charm. And then he actually drops the debuff, the -1 to hit debuff, and so you drop a spider that's -2 to hit. If people are going to push in and melee him, and he's 12 inches off the line, that can now drop the bomb.
Yeah.
And they have a really tough decision to make because now you're going to put him in a spot where like there's not a good unit for an enemy to charge him. Likely, like if any unit is going to swing around and hit him, it's going to be a unit that is going to be a non-optimal unit, and so you're going to be in the best possible spot to drop that and have a very threatening unit that's going to be hard to melee down.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Think about that 18-inch average range. Like if you're 10 inches behind your main front line, then you're going to be hitting your own troops on an average cast with it. So that is a very interesting limitation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a thematic limitation as well because it fits the randomness of MoonClan.
I'm very unexcited about the MoonClan stealing my Doom Rocket. Like, I hope when we get our Doom Rocket back in a month or two, whenever that guy comes out, it's very like this is the Doom Rocket problem. Like I said, I've played this for years. I'm familiar with this math. Now, that being said, there you go. The Scuttle Tide is really interesting because like it is that big plate because it can march out of terrain, so it effectively has an infinite range on the board. Right, you can march out of anything, including enemy setup terrain.
Right.
Like
I see this, and I'm like,
put that boat down.
Yeah. Or Sylvaneth Wildwood. This is the big
Sure.
FU.
Yeah.
You got some trees, huh? Good.
And what's relevant about it is how often it pings those mortal wounds, right? Because you set this thing up. There's two relevant things I want to point out about the Scuttle Tide quickly. One, it has to be wholly within 6 inches of a terrain feature, which means basically it's going to fit however it fits because it's a giant 6-inch thing. So like you're going to fit it however you can within that space. And you don't move it when it initially casts, right? Like it just pops up. It doesn't move initially. It's not like a spell that moves.
It's not a normal predatory spell.
Right, where it's like you cast it and then it also moves. Like, no, it just comes out and that's where it is. And after setting it up, it does move later, but it doesn't move right now. After setting it up or moving it, you pick one unit within an inch of this model and roll 6 dice. For every 5 up, it's a mortal wound. And in addition, you roll 6 dice for each unit that finishes a normal or charge move within 6 inches of this model. For each roll of 5 up, that suffers they suffer a mortal wound. And your own, by the way, that's all your stuff too, except your Spider Fang stuff. Your Spider Fang stuff ignores it. But like, that is an unbelievable deterrent to an area, because just like, that's a huge bubble around this thing. Right? To just like where people are just trying to move and charge and do everything normal, and they're triggering this off. So it is quite
potent.
It's quite a strong deterrent to an area. Yeah.
And for 30 points, it's affordable.
That's why I love this one, because it's 30 stupid points. That is crazy good for 30 points. That is the one that's what pushes it over the top for me. At like 50, I wouldn't be a buyer on this thing. I don't think, but at 30, that's pretty good. Okay, so let's finish out here. We'll talk about a couple other like synergies or insights, stuff like that. Dan, what else have you got? What else have you been looking at?
I was looking at my notes to see what else I had.
Yeah, what else haven't we talked about yet?
We haven't talked about debuff, horde, recycling kind of lists. I haven't brought them up because it's not a particularly play style that I enjoy or like doing. So I haven't given any thought to it, really. There was one other example of sort of fighting before combat that I picked out, which is if you're fighting in the realm of light and you can use one of your command points for the command trait or command ability there, and get always strikes first on the unit. That's particularly handy for that one time that you face that. But no, apart from that, I didn't have many other things to sort of add on to the list.
We should talk about Debuffathon 2019, right? Because I think this is a relevant list. And I'm not sure it's not the most potent of lists. It's also a feel bad. Like, I'm not sure this isn't the winner, right? So let's start talking this through so we all kind of get this together, right? So this is probably going to rely on the Skulk Mob Horde Battalion in the center of it. So the Skulk Mob Horde is 3+ units of Stab as a Shoot as in any combination, and 3 units of Loon Smash or Spore Splatter Fanatics in any combination. We'll talk about Fanatics and how they work in a moment. It's relevant. But basically what this battalion does is once per battle, when you use the Loon Shrine's ability to successfully replace a destroyed unit. And that's relevant because you can roll the 4 up on a unit, fail, and then try again on that same unit the next turn. Right? Okay. So once per battle, when you successfully do it, you don't have to like say it before you roll and then fail it. You get the whole unit back instead of half the unit. So on a 4+, your 60, whatever comes back. Okay. Yep. All right. So, out of the gate, as per usual with our little goblin boys, right? We've got our netters, right? And you can get basically 3 in every 20 models can have a net, right? So you can have 60 goblins. So theoretically, at a max size unit, you can have 9 netters. Math's pretty straightforward. Okay. And you subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy models while they are within 2 inches of any friendly model with a net. Okay, so your goblin with a net's on a 25 mil base. He's about an inch across. He has a little 2-inch bubble on each side of him. That means he's got about a 5-inch wide space, right, of neg 1 to hit.
Right.
All right. So we can space out our goblin netters accordingly when we're moving them. And we can sort of make sure that like at least around probably the majority of the horde, we're broadcasting a neg 1 to hit. Now, I hate this already because I hate good players to play this right will need to move a horde of tiny idiots on 25 mil base in units of 60 extremely carefully, right? Yep. Because if your netters end up in the middle or out of position, you don't just get that neg 1. They have to be within range, right?
I mean, it's an argument for trays because trays will always keep those guys in the right spot when you
until you hit any kind of terrain where they have to move in a weird way, or you need to daisy chain, or you need Okay, so that's your straight neg one, right? Now, obviously, there are other penalties here too. So, I mean, Tom, do you want to talk about some of the other, like we mentioned a couple of them during the spells, but do you want to talk about how you would stack the debuffathon?
Yeah, your primary neg one would be something like the goblin nets. The next round of things that you could shove into this would be like the 12-inch broadcast from the spider. I forget what it's called. I'm still mastering all the names. The sneaky distraction spell, which is a big 12-inch bubble. Targeted debuffs, you can get one from one of the Grotapalooza goblin casters, a 12-inch neg 1 to hit debuff. You can also get a neg 1 from the troll hag that goes in the army. You can also get a neg 1 from Geminids. And so it's not hard to slot in a lot of neg 1s to hit. And by the way, if you don't want to run those grots, you can run the trolls, the Fellwater trolls that are neg 1 to hit. So the advantage of the grots is that they're broadcasting their neg 1, and so you can kind of stack your army such that they're pushing that neg 1 over a front line. So like, let's say that you had the fanatics, like a line of fanatics followed by a line of these like really close behind them netters, and then with then wrapped around the Arachnarok pushed up, you could easily have like a neg 2 broadcasted on the front line bubble. That they have to hit the fanatics to go into. Now, obviously, like it's a super awkward. Larger units are going to be able to push out of that, but the reality is that like the worst part about this is all like measurements of like which models are within the right range.
Yep.
And so it's going to be super fiddly to kind of figure out, and it's going to be a pain in the butt.
Yep. This is the feel bad I had talked about before this book ever happened, and this is the thing that I'm most concerned with, because I'm not sure this isn't also the best list. Right. Like, I'm not sure it is. I'm just saying I'm not sure it isn't.
Well, because witches hit that like situation and just break against it. Like even good super buff witches, they're just going to hit it and stop.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the other key piece here we haven't really talked about, which is Loon Smasher Fanatics. All right. Because we need to touch on these guys real quick, and then we're gonna wrap it up here soon in just a few minutes. So Loon Smashes they don't act like they used to. Let's cover how they work real quick. So, all right, you could still hide Loon Smashes in like your stabas. Okay, so that can still happen, no problem. All right, we get that. So Loon Smashes are 5 for 140, and they can be in a maximum unit of 15. And I can stick all 15 into a single unit of goblins, right? If I'm so inclined. Again, these have to go into Moon Clan Grots, which, as we mentioned, Moon Clan Grots, which are at least 5 models. So Stabas and Shooters. Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay. And you have to record down where they go. All right. You don't set them up. Here we go. And you can't have more than 1 unit, but 1 unit can be 15 dudes. At the start of your charge phase, you can release this unit. If you do so, set up this unit wholly within 3 inches of the unit it was with, and more than 3 inches from enemy units. So that's the first restriction I want to talk about, right? Because that's really interesting. If somebody rides up on you and sits at 3 inches, right, then you can't put your fanatics directly in front of them to block them from the goblin unit.
Right. Yep.
Right? So like if you have a goblin unit and I ride up in the movement phase at 3 inches away, if I'm on the 3-inch line, there's no room in here where you can fit your fanatics. Now you can still release them, and you could be within 3 inches of me where you're fighting, but you got to come out on the sides, right, or something like that. Okay. All right. So if this unit was released in your charge phase, it can attempt to make a charge move in that phase, unless the unit it was with has any restrictions that would stop it from attempting to charge. If it ran, for example, so you can't like run the goblins and then shoot the dudes forward. If it was released in the enemy charge phase, it cannot attempt to make a charge move. But they sit there. So they're a screen. So somebody moves up on you, and isn't at the 3-inch line, you can pop all these dudes out right in front of your unit. And now they're just like the greatest deterrent in the world. Because remember, each one of these dumb goblins, of which I have 15, make D6 attacks on 4-up, 3-up, -2 rend, D3 damage. And
they're basically they're Miremorn Banshee profiles, but a D6 attacks instead of 1.
Yes, sure. And notably, they have Whirling Death, which means they fight at the start of the combat phase before the players pick any other units to fight.
Right, which means they preempt High Tide, to be clear.
Yep. They preempt High Tide. If it's your turn and you pop them in charge, you get 2 selections before the enemy gets 1. Right? Like, they don't chew your first pick off.
Right.
So, like, and that happens even if they're charged, if whatever. They are so potent. Right? And, you know, like, if you can't shoot them down, because there's like, it's a meta very light on shooting right now, your only choice is to go into them and kill them in melee. And, like, that's a real problem. And of course, right now, the problem is when we look at Hand of Gork, we have the Phanatomic Bomb, right? Where we Hand of Gork a unit of like whatever Stabas at 9 inches. Then at the start of the charge phase, I pop these guys out, and now they have a 6-inch charge of 15 of these lunatics into an enemy unit, right?
They are your alpha. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So as it stands right now, you can just like shoot a unit over 9 inches away, pop the fanatics to 6, and Phanatomic Bomb them. 15 D6 attacks at -2 rend D6 or D3 damage.
Averaging 52 attacks for those that can't do math.
Sure.
Me.
So of those 52, 26 are going to hit.
Yep.
Right. A solid 18 of them are going to wound. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
18,
and then
19
you
are
chew
going
up
to wound.
about 3 of them on saves, right, against a 4-up unit.
Because it's
meaning you
-2
get
rend.
15 D3, about 30 damage.
Yep.
Pretty
That's
good.
Life. Yeah, these guys are going to become real common in the meta very quickly. Like, and so
they're
this
expensive.
alpha,
Like that 15 unit
there.
is not cheap. It's 420
No,
points in a goblin army. That's a lot.
No, but it's the type of list that's not hard to paint and it's hard to get on the table. Or it's easy to get on the table because a lot of people have fanatics already. You're going to see this and it's going to catch people with their pants down and it's going to create a lot of feel bad experiences.
Sure.
Yeah, and like the only thing that you're going to do to get rid of the charge blocking version of them is sort of damage in the charge phase, right? And there's only a few abilities in the game that give you the ability to do damage in the charge phase.
One of those is coming in hot on the meta, Slanesh.
I mean,
so like,
sure, I'll bring a Herald into him, no problem. Like I will Tokyo drift a Herald into that line of fanatics and hope for the best.
I mean, what I would say is this though. This is a case for if you are not running cheap chaff lines right now, you have to be.
Yeah,
sure, because the cheap chaff line will shut off the Phanatomic Bomb.
Right, like you have to have cheap chaff lines now. Like it is a must in this new world, and or be able to pile in from like 6 inches, like outside of this, so that they get selected, they hit, obliterate something, and then you pile in on them outside of the 6 inches and wipe out the fanatics.
Sure.
So like Sisters of Slaughter come to mind as a good solution to
where you put like a throwaway tenor of witches into them and then jump in with the sisters to kill them. Like let them splat the witches and then you come in. Yeah.
Yep. So there are solutions. There are ways to deal with them.
Oh, sure. It's a very powerful option. All right. I know we got to wrap this up. Dan, any closing thoughts on the goblins here as we bring this one to a close?
I love the book. Like I just love the gobos, love the release, love the artwork, the new models, 15 new releases or whatever it was total in the end. Multiple ways to play, bit of something for everybody. The only thing that we really haven't spent much time on is troll builds. But everything else, there seems to be something to talk about and to play with. And it's the armies are going to look great on the table. You've got a mixture of size units. You've got small stuff, medium-sized stuff, big stuff. It'll just look great. So no, looking forward to seeing them.
I agree.
I may have said to Vince.
let's all remind ourselves that like let's wind back in time to like 2 months ago when Tom was like, I'm not buying any of this crap. I don't care about this army. Now, please, Tom,
I'm
continue.
not buying a new army, is what I said.
No, you were much more hard than that. I'll go pull the quote if you really want, but continue.
That I need to buy. I may need to buy 5 more Ragnaroks. That was a statement that I made to him yesterday.
Yep.
And so we'll see. I mean, I have like out on the table, I probably have 5,000 to 6,000 points of goblins on my table right now, like that I'm staring at, that need to be variously assembled and stuff like that. And so this is probably going to be my army for next year.
Yep.
Like my big hobby project this year with daughters. I'll probably swing into these guys. They're not going to be like top of the meta, and I'm okay with that. They're going to be fun. I think they're going to win some games. They're going to be competitive lists there, and I think they're going to be a wonderful hobby opportunity for those that are interested in that kind of thing.
Agreed. And for those who feel like you didn't get enough Goblin love tonight, in 2 weeks, we're going to do a second Goblin show. There was too much Gitz to pack into one show. So in 2 weeks, we're going to do part 2 of our Gobapalooza. So don't worry, where we'll dig into more builds, more units, more lists. The Goblin love will continue.
And we're probably going to talk about more Spiderfang. Like that show will probably only be spiders.
We'll talk spiders and trolls a lot. We didn't get to touch on trolls. We'll talk a lot of trolls this game. I love the trolls personally, so I'm going to be repping them pretty hard in that show. I'll be our troll brother. You know I love low model count armies. Like forget 26 model Ironjaw's army. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, I hear low model count. I'm showing up. But Dan, thank you very much, buddy. We're so happy to have you on for this show. It was great.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And we will have Dan back in the future. I will not let this sin continue. He will return. Don't worry. But to all of you out there, thank you very much for watching. We certainly appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.